Here's a quote from Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis. You see, the Bible doesn't merely answer what science cannot. The Bible provides a very foundation and framework for science. It's only because there is an eternal, consistent, and orderly God who created the earth and the universe that we can study creation, trusting in the laws of nature that will apply the same in the future as they did yesterday and do today. So many first of alls. The Bible is not a framework for science. Not only is it filled with scientific inaccuracies, we know that there was no global flood. We know that there was no Adam and Eve. We know that you can't create a whole human race from 2 people and then also a small collection of 8 people later. But the very idea that we already know everything we need to know, and that because we understand one thing, we now know everything about everything, goes against the very foundation of science. The point of science is to try to prove yourself wrong and only to move forward with an idea when you can't do that anymore. To assume that you already know all the answers because you left it in some Bronze Age sex manual doesn't really mean learning anything new about the universe. I could go on and on about why this quote makes so very little sense, but this show is for you to talk to us. So if you think that this book tells us anything at all about science, then call in, because the show starts right now.
Bronze Age sex manual.
Tell me that's not what it is.
Yeah.
Tell me that's not what it is.
Yeah, but there's not enough details. Like, I want to know how my ancestors were getting it, you know? But anyway, welcome, everyone. It's kind of pervy to want to know how your ancestors are. It's like,
your ancestors involves your parents, and I don't want to think about that.
No. Okay, strike that. Forget I ever said it.
It's not too late to take it back.
Well, no one. Are we live? Oh, we're live. Welcome, everyone. Today's December 10th, 2023. I'm Johnny P, Angel, and joining me today is obviously Mr. Forrest Valkai. How you doing, sir?
Hi.
That means he's doing well. Today,
I didn't know you asked me how I am. There's a delay.
How are you? You're fantastic. Well, I'm fantasticer because I'm here with you, and we're here doing AXP, the Atheist Experience, which happens to be, I don't know if you're aware of this, a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Oh, wow, that was fast. We have a question of the week. Yeah. Before we take any calls, we're going to do the question of the week. It's called Share Your Experience. If you haven't seen it before, you can see it now. Last week, we asked for wrong answers only, and boy, do we get them. What would you give Jesus for his birthday? It's coming up. He is expecting a present, and he's not going to unconditionally appreciate it. So number 3, Kevin Fancher 3512 says, I would give Jesus a huge, I haven't read this before, I'm afraid, a huge bag of roasted chilies to see if Catholics notice any change in the taste of his flesh and blood. I like it. That's a good one. Okay. Records of the Wasteland 8741. Wow, there's a lot of records of the wastelands out there. Says, I would give Jesus a square foot of land in Scotland so he can actually be a lord. Nice. We were talking about that before the show.
We were. Yeah.
I'm a baron of Sealand, just for the record. You know, you're free to call me baron if you want to. And then number 1, Caleb Darby 220. Happy birthday, Jesus. Here's a paternity test. We're calling Mary's bluff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Poor. That's for Jesus' birthday? I guess, he deserves to know, doesn't he?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
We got another one this week, a new prompt. We're going to ask you to put it in the comments below. Don't put it in the live chat. It's going to go to Nowheresville real quick. And this one this week is, what is an inappropriate thing to do or say at a holiday party? What would you do, Forrest? What's an inappropriate thing you'd do?
You know what? I think it would be pretty inappropriate to act like a reindeer because that seems like a pretty Rudolph thing to do.
Jeepers creepers.
Yeah.
I can't argue with
on that one.
Sit on it,
to be
Ralph.
fair, you would only, somebody would only do that if they already had really low elf esteem.
Also true. It's also true.
We're so far away, and yet I feel so close to you right now, Johnny.
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
I'm physically causing you pain through
Yeah,
the
no,
internet,
no.
and that makes me happy.
Yeah, it is mission accomplished. Hey, folks, if you can do better than that, and I don't know if you can, please put that in the comments below, and next week we will reveal the top 3 choices. And as I like to say, sometimes I sit in on that and I help choose it. So I will suffer probably more than most people out there listening to responses like that are really good. I really enjoy it. All right, we're going to
Smash
take
that subscribe button for more terrible dad jokes.
ring the bell. Ring that bell. All right, I'm going to do, we're going to take our first call, and I want it to be Ray. Ray is a gentleman coming out of West Virginia who, according to our notes here, he says, I think God is sovereign and we have limited free will. Ray, you're on the Atheist Experience with Forrest Valkai and Johnny P. Angel. Tell us more.
Hey, yeah. You guys are both atheists, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you believe in evolution? I mean, like, we came from higher apes. Do you believe that?
So I'm going to say yes, just so that we can move on, but just to be safe, because this is an internet show and there's a lot of people out there. So forgive me if this is nitpicky. I wouldn't use the word believe, because belief is, accepting something without evidence. And
Okay.
I know that like I said, I know that's really nitpicky. Please forgive me. I'm not trying to be a jerk to you, but we're on the internet. So yeah, no, I have tremendous amounts of evidence for evolution. Yeah. So I know that evolution is real because of the evidence.
Yeah. It's one of those things where we accept it as the most comprehensive explanation for the diversity of life on Earth. Pretty much, as opposed to,
I just want a clarification. We can get to election predestination just a second. So you have rationalized, I'm not going to use the word believe, that you two guys and myself have evolved from higher apes?
Well, like not me specifically, because individuals don't evolve, but human beings, our species is the descent. And again, forgive me for being pedantic. Really, I'm sure that if you and I were sitting across from each other at a table, we could have a much faster conversation. The emails that we get, where people are like, so you believe this thing, so you have faith in this thing. It's like, no.
Yeah.
So whatever language you want to use, I'm cool with it. Just forgive me if I have to chime in every now and then and clarify my own points.
Yeah.
But yes, no, human beings evolved from other species. And when you use the word human, you could really be talking about anything in the genus Homo. The genus Homo goes back about 2.6 million years. And we have millions and millions of detailed data points that show us how and when and where and why that happened. The scientific argument is over that. It's not if it happened. The scientific argument is how it happened, why it happened, what were the forces behind it, things like that.
And Ray, with that answer given, all right, notwithstanding our acceptance of evolution by natural selection, does this have something to do with why you believe God is sovereign and we have limited free will?
Well, this was just kind of an aside before I got into that real quick.
Well, before we get our side dishes, why don't we get the main entree at the table? So you think God is sovereign, all right? Why do you think there is a God?
Well, I was talking about Ayn Rand.
Oh, boy.
Ayn Rand, she was an atheist, and she came to her viewpoint through reason and logic and so forth. And I've heard you guys kind of get on Christians because they come from a presuppositional point of view. But I'd kind of like to take exception with that. I've studied all the world religions and unbelief, atheism, agnosticism, and I've came to my point of view from the knowledge I have been given by my Creator. Now, I have some good news for you guys. when people were born, every human on the face of this earth hates God. Does that make you feel good?
No, I don't think that's true.
Very few things make me feel good, Ray. But
No,
but real quick,
we were, well, we were born in sin. We hate God, but God is sovereign.
How do you? I'm sorry, Ray. How do you hate something when you don't know that it exists yet?
Yeah.
Because, every baby that's born doesn't know anything besides their immediate surroundings. So, how does a baby know that there is a God that exists in order to hate it?
Well, they have to gain a little knowledge, but they're
so they're not born then.
In their heart.
They're not born hating him then. So you would like to amend your statement to say that after they gain a little bit knowledge after being born, then they start hating God? Is that what you're saying, Ray?
Well, when you come to an age of reason, you can't expect 2-month-year-old to talk and give an opinion and a philosophy.
Wow.
Yes, all humans hate God.
Wow. I'm going to tell you something, Ray. I know you like to speak for all humans, but I'm a human, such as I am, and I don't hate God because I don't have a belief that God exists. I also don't hate a litany of other fictional characters that I don't think exist. I might, within the context of the stories, the Wicked Witch of the West.
Well,
she's mean, but I don't hate her because she's not real. And so
you hate the idea of a God.
I don't hate the idea of a God. The idea of a God is different than a God. I have that I recognize evidence to establish that a God exists, Ray.
Well, I'm not going to try.
Do you hate chupacabras? Do you hate chupacabras, Ray?
Well, I don't want to be around them. Let's say that.
Fair enough.
I don't like Mothman either. So.
All right. Do you hate Mothman? Do you hate Mothman? Let's get down to brass tacks. How do you feel about Mothman? Do you hate him?
Well, he's a pretty rough character.
Do you believe that he exists?
Johnny Monster.
Yeah. Do you believe that he exists?
Quite possibly. Quite possibly. He could be a fallen angel of some type.
Oh, wow.
Let's pick one that just to drill in the point here to make sure that we're all on the same page. I'm
trying to. If you guys
Sauron?
Sauron. How do you feel about Sauron, Ray? Do you hate him?
You know Lord of the Rings, Ray?
A little bit, but we're talking about God.
Well, let's talk about Sauron for a while. This is.
I feel like we're really missing the point because apparently you're potentially believing in cryptids, and I'm going to be honest with you, that threw me for a loop, Ray. I wasn't expecting it. So I'm trying to make sure that the point is driven home here with something that we can all agree isn't real. Sauron, do you hate him or do you just not think he's real?
Well, I'm talking about you let Christians call in. I'm coming from a biblical view.
Ray, back up a second. We have a conversation. We got a back and forth here. See, we don't believe that God exists. We don't hate him because we don't believe that God exists. And we're trying to nail down something that you don't think actually exists. And we tried with chupacabras, but it sounds like you don't want to be around them and they could be a cryptid. Then we started talking about Mothman, probably Slender Man's in there as well. So do you believe that the Dark Lord Sauron, Anatar Lord of Gifts, one of the Maiar of Iluvatar from the fictional universe, as far as we know, of Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, it actually exists? Or do you believe that Sauron is a fictional character? Just answer that question first.
Well, I take offense that the creator of the universe, you're making a mockery of.
All right, I acknowledge that you're offended. Now, putting your offense to the side, Ray, back to the question. Do you believe that Sauron exists? And just bear with us for a minute. If you say yes, I don't know where we're going to go with this, but do you think that Sauron exists? Because I don't think Sauron exists, and I don't think you do either. Will you say, I don't believe Sauron exists? Come on, Johnny, you're being silly. Will you say that?
I've never heard of him, so I have no way of knowing. I assume it's a
General Zod.
Literary
Does that work?
Pick your favorite literary antagonist, Ray. Let's flip, dude. We've been on the call for 10 minutes. Can we just tell us what's a thing? What's a bad guy in movies or something that you don't think is real? Give us that.
About Hillary Clinton.
That's a real
You
person.
don't think Hillary Clinton is real?
Hey, Ray, what kind of movies do you like to watch, Ray? Real quick, just give me an example of a movie that you liked.
I guess your point is...
No, don't tell me what my point is. Tell me the name of a movie that you liked.
Well, I like Western movies.
All right.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Oh, I got it. Hold on, I got it.
Too. Forrest, go for it. I got one.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm Googling. Who's the antagonist from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
Oh, that would be it's Lee Van Cleef, the character Lee Van Cleef.
Angel Eyes.
Angel Eyes.
Okay, Ray.
All right.
Do you know the character Angel Eyes from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
I don't know the character, but I've seen the movie.
Okay. Good enough. Do you hate this man? Do you hate the character Angel Eyes? Do you hate him? Or do you just think that he's not real?
I don't hate him because I'm commanded to love my enemies.
So
Fuck me, dude.
Yeah. Ray, I don't know if you're dodging us or if this is just the way you think about things, but I'm gonna do a little roundup for you, Ray. Look, I like Westerns quite a bit. All right, Angel Eyes is one heck of a bad guy. He's very menacing, one of those capable villains. But we don't believe he exists. We don't hate things that we don't think exists. Honestly, I don't think Forrest and I really hate a whole lot at all.
No.
But we don't. If we can dial it back a little bit, I'm not working against the interests of Angel Eyes. I'm not trying to mobilize people to get together to fight the Angel Eyes agenda because there isn't one. It's not real. And so we don't believe in Yahweh. We don't believe in Sauron. So we don't hate any of these.
I'm not trying to convince you that there is a God.
Right, but you started this call by making a claim that you started this call by making a claim that there's these evil, that we all hate this God, and we're trying to get across to you for 12 minutes now. Yeah. We're just trying to get across to you that you can't hate something that you don't think is real, right? I don't hate Darth Vader. Darth Vader isn't real. Do I like the character? Do I think the character was a good guy? No. But I don't hate him, and I don't work to try to stop him, and I'm not out to get him, and he's just not real. It's a fantasy. It's a fairy tale. It's a story. It's a movie. It's something on the screen. We feel the same way about the God that we believe in.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Ray?
If you don't like the concept of God and Christianity, why do you have a whole show?
I got an answer for that one, Forrest. Let me take this one, Ray.
Yeah, by all means.
Ray, you're a little bit unfocused, but I can answer that one pretty easy. The reason why we have this show is because we live in a world that is dominated in different areas by people of certain groups who believe in certain mythological, what they think are truths, but we think are unsubstantiated claims about the world. They use their influence and their organization to force others to live in a way that they think is right, but is really according to the dictates of what their particular beliefs and prejudices are. They pass laws, they limit the freedoms of individuals, and they receive benefits from from taxpayers, and I don't want to do that because I don't believe in the same morality. I believe in a humanist morality that's centered around human well-being, okay? And the second that the religious people of the world, Ray, could keep it in their pants and stop trying to force others to believe as they do, well, then I probably wouldn't be doing this show anymore. But as it is, we got religious weirdos who are trying to force their beliefs into civil society, and that's why we got the show. Plus, we got people who were born a little bit outside the norm, the cultural norms, which is a religious cultural norm in this country, folks who might be in the LGBTQ community, folks who might have different non-religious beliefs, and they live out there all around the world, and they might feel that they're alone because in a lot of ways, you've got to buy into the myth to participate in culture and society. And so this show is also a place where those people can see that they are not alone, that they got friends.
The Christians are trying to get laws passed for their moral viewpoint.
Right.
But don't socialists and communists kind of force people into positions? You're talking about homosexuality.
Sure am.
And homosexuality is supposed to be about love and caring. And
I don't think it actually is. I think homosexuality is
just
but, a state.
Love shouldn't be about degradation and bleeding and humiliation, putting dog collars on people. And
oh gosh,
what does that have to do with homosexuality?
Oh gosh, you know that there are straight people that do that too, Ray. Tons of them.
Fist up somebody's ass.
Yeah, straight people do that too. Heterosexual people are shoving all kinds of things up each other's butts. Let me tell you. Yep. At least that's what I hear. So that's not unique. That's not unique to folks who are in our LGBTQ community. That's just kink stuff, man.
Okay.
And some of those folks, they have a heck of a good time when they do it.
Well, just when you end up in a hospital and people wreck their internal organs and stuff.
Don't like that. I'm gonna tell you what, Ray. I really had a good time talking to you, Forrest. I muted him because I want to give you the last chance at this call. But you ever meet those people where you want to talk to them about something, and every conversation is the history of all conversations, and you never really get to one point?
That's exactly how I feel right now. Is that we've been on the call for about 15 minutes now, and literally every time we have said a thing, the answer has been a completely different rabbit trail into a completely different conversation. And now we're talking about whether or not the original call was, I think God is sovereign and we have limited free will. That was the beginning of the call. And now we are on whether or not it's morally appropriate to engage in anal sex, because you might end up in the hospital with your organs changed, which, let me tell you, is a wild claim that I don't think applies to most people in general. Certainly not most gay people. I don't, just super weird generalizations that are totally undeserving of not only the people he's talking about, but the people he's talking to. So you can do whatever you want with the end of the call. I have a totally different direction that I would take it in, but it's not.
You don't want to do it? You want to pass?
I'll do one. I'll do one.
Okay, go for it. Okay, let me unmute.
Okay.
Ray, we're not talking about fisting. You're going to talk with Forrest. All right.
I actually was.
Damn it! The one time. Okay, go for it.
No, I was gonna ask Ray uncomfortable questions about homosexual sex just to see what his thoughts were, just because it was funny to me. But hey, let's not waste any time with it. Ray, real question: do you think that you've made any progress in terms of advocating for Christianity today? We'll skip what I was gonna do, because what I was gonna do was wildly inappropriate.
Skip the fisting. Yeah.
But
I was
you
just.
You guys won't let me talk, man. You guys won't let me talk.
Well, because Ray, every time we ask you a question, we get to a completely different bunny trail, and now we're talking about gay sex. You asked about whether or not God is sovereign. That's where you called in for.
Yeah.
So you brought up LGBT. You brought it up.
He's right.
Yeah.
I did. He's right. I did.
Just yeah, but talking about LGBT people does not directly entail just talking about sex and doing things to your butt and all these things. Who you love and who you have sex with and how you have sex are all very different things. You understand that, right?
Well, I mean, that's your thing. I mean, it's not my thing, but anyway, you you won't let me talk. We never got to talk. I wanted to
I
talk.
tell you what, Ray, I'll give you a full 30 seconds. What is the point of your call? What is the thing you want us to understand?
Okay, God is sovereign. God saves who he will save. And if he don't save everyone, he's still loving and sovereign, because all of humanity does not love God unless God opens their eyes and causes them to believe. And the theory of evolution...
That sounds like a solid statement. I promise I'll let you finish. I promise I'll let you finish that sentence.
I'm going to let you finish,
Yeah, we'll talk about evolution here in a second. But that sounds like one solid statement. That God is sovereign and that he's going to save who he's going to save, and people go, okay. Next question, how do you know? How do you know that?
Well, it's like I was talking about Ayn Rand. I've come to the conclusion... It's not even worth debating between me and you, because you will not believe. You would accept no evidence. If Jesus
That's not true. That's very not
YouTube,
true. I am a scientist. My job is digging for evidence and accepting evidence, even if I don't like it.
Okay,
so just really quick, but I want to understand here.
Ray, cool your
Your call then is God is sovereign, but it's not worth talking to you about. That's why the fuck did you call me?
Why did you call?
Why did you call us?
Because I was giving you the good news. You're unbelievers. I'm just saying you have the right to be an unbeliever.
I don't think it's good news, buddy. I really, really don't think that it's good news. I think it's terrible news.
Well, I hope you don't. I hope you don't. I hope you come to Christ and understanding of the Lord. I really do.
Ray,
not into fisting.
But your show is set up to antagonize Christians and mock and all this stuff.
Absolutely not.
No.
And so let me ask you one question. Have you ever watched this show before, and have you ever listened to anything that Johnny or I have ever said before? Do you know who we are?
I watched the documentary on TV, and I watched a couple episodes on YouTube.
Okay, have you seen Forrest or me before?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Have you seen Forrest on this show or me on this show before?
Well, I don't know which guys are which guys. I mean, y'all have had several different hosts. One guy I'm familiar with is kind of balding guy with like a beard.
Okay, but we're talking about Forrest. Are you looking at a screen right now? Forrest's got beautiful curly hair, right? And I got this Richard Spencer thing going on. So the slick, shorter hair on the side, whatever. Have you seen either of us, Johnny or Forrest?
I apologize if I generalized. I was thinking.
No, nothing to apologize for. We're just asking if you know who we are, because we want to know if you understand where we're coming from, because you're putting words in our mouths that we don't deserve. Johnny and I are very open to evidence. The point of this show is to ask for good arguments and to have conversations. Yeah. And you say that we're out here trying to antagonize Christians. Did we call you or did you call us? We just have a show that you can call into if you want and try to give your best argument for God. And so far, I think we've been incredibly charitable and kind to you. You've been on here for 22 minutes of the what do we have, like a 90-minute show on average?
Something like that, yeah.
And we've given you like a third of it. And we've been very polite to you. We haven't mocked you or made fun of you. We've been a little bit silly, but we've been very polite to you. We've been letting you say whatever weird things you want to say about people that we love and care about here.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to just get a straight answer out of you and hear what you believe and why. We're not evangelists. We don't go around knocking on doors trying to tell people about atheism. I live in a place where there's double-digit churches within walking distance of my house. And if you knew my arguments, you'd know that I find crosses and things to be hate symbols. I think that the Christian religion is incredibly hateful. I think phrases like Jesus loves you are really, really hurtful, mean things to say. And they're all around me all the time. And I just deal with it and suck it up and try to be nice because I know everybody around me doesn't see these things the way that I see these things. And here you all are calling us, accusing us of antagonizing you and hating your God when we just don't believe it's real, and we're trying to let you talk and trying to let you talk to us.
Yeah.
I don't understand where this victim mentality comes from you, Ray.
And Ray, if I may piggyback on that, is that we're trying to have a conversation to be efficient so that we can, and this is for all the callers in the queue if you're listening, all right? This ain't our first rodeo, all right? Don't prevaricate and take us down the primrose path. Just come to the point. You wanted to say, I think God is sovereign. We have limited free will. First thing out of your mouth is something about evolution. What does that have to do with God is sovereign and we have limited free will? We wanted to hear about God's sovereignness. First of all, prove that God exists, prove that God is sovereign, and then talk about free will. And you're off in the poppies here, So that's why maybe you feel put upon, oppressed, and maybe, we won't let you talk because you're just going off the map. Okay? So with that said,
ties in.
Say again?
Down, brother. I said it ties in evolutionism and unbelief. It all ties together.
Don't tell us about why we're wrong. Tell us about why you're right. Okay? So tell us, how do you know that God exists? And then if you don't stay on that path, so we can have a conversation that's focused instead of about everything, which is what we've done so far, right? We're just going to let you go. All right? So why do you believe God exists?
Because we're here. I think, therefore I exist. We're here. You didn't create yourself, did you? You didn't make the universe. Atheism is horrible. I mean, communism's killed hundreds of millions of people. Evolution is the theory. All people, according to evolutionism, couldn't have evolved exactly the same. It's a lot of its main proponents were racist.
Right.
If we all evolved,
couple of things here.
What?
Couple of things here. Sorry, just you're immediately, holy crap, dude. First of all, atheism is simply the lack of belief in God. There are atheists out there that don't accept things like evolution or the Big Bang. Atheism and science are different things. I happen to be someone who dabbles in both. So as far as the Big Bang and where humans came from, where life came from, we actually have really good explanations for all of those things. And those explanations are based on evidence, not on some ancient book, not on a feeling, not on the lack of belief in any other thing. They're based on hard evidence towards the ideas that we hold. And then you bring up communism. Atheism and communism are different things. And also you say, oh, communism is all these people died under communism. People die under capitalism all the time too. So what's your point? There have been plenty of dictators of all sorts of different ilks that have done all sorts of different things. Some of them were atheists. Some of them weren't. The Nazis were a religious organization. They were, the first treaty they signed was with the Catholic Church. So I don't know what to tell you. And then you end up on this thing that this is this horrible viewpoint because it's racist, that evolution is racist, which is a ridiculous thing to say because that's talking about what's called social Darwinism, which is pseudoscience. People who misunderstand evolution and use it to back racist ideals, which has been thoroughly debunked by actual scientists for centuries. So it sounds to me, Ray, like you've never spent a single minute talking to anybody who doesn't already agree with what you already think. And here you are coming on the show telling us these things as if they're these like universal truths about reality when they're simply not. They're apologetics and propaganda. And I congratulate you for finally calling and talking to people who don't agree with you, but it really, really sucks to hear you just like completely generalize and lump together all of these very different belief systems and ideals because they all collectively don't agree with the one thing that you believe in. It makes it sound like you think you have a monopoly on goodness by being a Christian, and that's gross.
Yeah, I dropped him because, Forrest, we're not going to get anything good. Some folks just aren't ready to call in because I don't think they've got any kind of focus on their thoughts at all. But
I was actually going to talk about depravity and crazy anal sex and things like that, just because I thought it would be funny. I was going to ask him, why is the male G-spot in the butt? Was your God wrong to put such a pleasurable thing there for you to enjoy? Don't you want to do what God wants you to do with your body? I was going to do like some weird shit like that, but honestly, like the more I thought about it, it just kind of, and especially after that last bit, it became very clear that it wouldn't have gotten anywhere because, like, I don't think he was actually internalizing anything we said. It was just, when am I ready to speak now? When's my turn? You know what I mean?
I don't think he knows that. And so, Ray, I would encourage you to, safely, of course, I want you to consult with your doctor and maybe get together with a loved one. And there's a lot of sex shops. I know there is in West Virginia. It's almost heaven, West Virginia. So probably head on down to your local sex shop. Get yourself one of those. I was in Chicago. I was in Boys Town once upon a time. And they had it was like a full-on fist and forearm. And I said what? How on earth? And the guy's like, oh yeah, we sell them all the time. Like as a joke, he's like, no. And so just so you know, God's creation is a marvelous thing. You can shove whole forearms up your butt. Should that be your desire? But if you like what we do, yeah.
Was it not the great Christy Powell who once said, just give yourself a big old orgasm and maybe give somebody else one too?
Yeah.
That's what life's all about. That's the good stuff. Watch Ray actually believe that I genuinely think life is about sex because I'm an evil, immoral atheist.
Yeah. And if you like evil and immoral atheism and fisting, and you like the other things that we do on the show, there's plenty of ways you can support us. We've been running a brick fundraiser for a while. We'll be completing phase 1 at the end of January. Our featured brick this week comes from Jonathan in Texas.
Hey,
Forrest Valkai, an exceptional great ape. That's great. Thank you so much
really
for your
kind.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Jonathan. Be sure to get your brick purchase in by the end of January.
I genuinely didn't know that was a thing until this very moment. Thank you so much.
Now you know. You can become a channel member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. This will give you access to special chat emojis. I think our faces are one of them, or two of them. And that's cool. And available on atheist-community.org are printable flyers. Post these with permission to community bulletin boards so that people will know they should call the show and defend their faith. Maybe Ray. We can get more callers like Ray, maybe some better callers than Ray.
We need a longer show. If we're going to get more called in, right?
Goodness gracious. I want to talk to Camden, him out of North Carolina. Camden says...
You don't want to do super chats? You want to do those later?
Let's do it later.
Okay.
He says, I don't understand the atheist viewpoint. Can you help clarify some things? Yes, we can, Forrest, and I can answer some of your questions, but only from our perspective. We don't speak for all atheists. So go ahead and ask us a question, Camden. You're on AXP.
Awesome. This is my first time ever calling you guys, and I've watched you for a long time, so I just wanted to say that before I started. But
good to have you.
I really do enjoy y'all's channel. I've listened to it for a very long time.
Thanks, man.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
So I think my first question really, I believe in evolution. I believe it exists. I mean, I heard your talk earlier with Ray, and I'm not gonna say the word I believe. I know evolution exists.
Yeah.
However, that being said, evolution, its whole purpose is to basically reproduce. It's to try and optimize your offspring and constantly, recreate itself. And, that being said, you look at, I'll look at it a little deeper. You have DNA, you have animals and, bacteria, and all of its purpose is to constantly just, seek food and reproduce. So I'm curious, doesn't that innate urge kind of complement some of what God says in the Bible? And I'm not a Christian, but I can at least say there's something moving in there. There's an innate response, like a stimuli that's being reached. Why is life doing that if not being told to do it?
So I would say the biggest thing, I think I get where you're coming from in terms of the Bible is reproduce and multiply and be fruitful or things like that. Is that kind of what you're driving at?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say the difference that I would draw here is that there is no edict to reproduce. If life didn't we look back to the very beginning of life 3.8 billion years ago, what we classify as life, the way that we define life involves reproduction, right? There is no set single sentence dictionary definition of life in biology. What we do is we classify what is and isn't alive based on 7 different characteristics, one of which is reproduction. Now, does that mean that every single living thing has to reproduce, otherwise it's not alive? No, of course not. It's kind of a general principle. And what we can say is 3.8 billion years ago, if life started, if you had the beginnings of a very, very, very early cell, because even bacteria are remarkably complex compared to what a very basic cell could be. If it didn't reproduce, we wouldn't know about it. It wouldn't be around today. There would be nothing left of it. It would just have
Be
gone, right?
extinct.
Yes. And so the thing with reproduction and evolution is that evolution is the logical outcome of reproduction. Something that I always talk about whenever people want to talk about, whether or not evolution is true. The fundamental concept to understand, like neo-Darwinian basic evolution, is that DNA exists. There's different flavors of different genes, and that different genes are better suited in life in different environments. So you could have all the best alleles to be an amazing freaking penguin, and you're gonna die in the Sahara Desert. And you could have all the absolute best alleles to be a flounder. You could have the best flounder alleles, and you're gonna die in the Amazon rainforest jungle. You know what I mean? Like that. So like, there's just different environments are better suited for
unless that flounder has a
different
smartphone.
alleles. Exactly. But like that's the whole point. If you know that DNA exists and that you get it from your parents and that it comes in different flavors and that those different flavors are better for different environments, then evolution reasonably follows. And that's why, when we talk about evolution, a lot of people think that it's all about survival. It's not. You're right. It is about reproduction. And I would say all of that, as pedantic as it sounds, to just say, I understand what you're driving at, that this kind of sounds like something that might sound somewhat religious, but there's simply no need for that baggage. This is the logical conclusion.
No, I'm not adding
Sorry, go on.
Right.
Camden.
Well, I'm not trying to...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please. I was just asking you what... It sounds like you wanted to clarify something, Camden. So go ahead and clarify what you were going.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm not attempting to add any sort of religious baggage. I'm a deist. So I do believe there's a God that created everything. And I do prescribe to different religious, moral beliefs, but very particular on those, because I won't agree with everything that the Bible says, because a lot of it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like such as slavery and racism and genocide and wars and famine. I don't agree with any of that.
Infinite punishment for a finite crime. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Terrible. It's terrible. So, I guess what I'm really trying to understand is, and I understand a lot of, people will ask this question, and it's one of those sort of annoying, redundant questions, but it's a question that's always bothered me. And it's, how can there be something without nothing? And, we look at evolution and we look at the way that it's been able to adapt, and we say life is just so spontaneous and, it came from non-living things, but how did it just, you can't just say it just came from a non-living thing. And I understand there's this slope, and I've read The God Delusion, and, it takes millions and millions and billions of years for it to get up that slope. But for it to even be able to do that, like I would look at, just for an example, and I don't want to be too long on this call, but I want to respect your all's time. Yeah. But you look at like a software engineer, if he's coming up with, artificial intelligence that learns on its own, and you put it through the software and it learns and it's able to do whatever you ask it to do. Maybe you ask it to do something as simple as lay bricks, and it comes up with the perfect strategy of laying bricks and how fast you can lay them. It's able to, figure this stuff with an algorithm, but you have to put that algorithm in there. You have to give it a goal. You have to give it an objective. Like there has to be preset functions and domains, but why don't we give that same sort of, weight to the life that we're living? Like, I mean, grass didn't just grow, right? It came from seeds, and those seeds had to grow and adapt to those environments. And that's why there's different types of grass everywhere. But at the end of the day, it all came from seeds. And why is it that a seed does what it does? And why does it, and I'm not saying it wants to do, but if we are following a sort of, Charles Darwin, Richard Dawkins, we're following a Richard Dawkins belief that, there's a selfish gene in there. It's wanting to do it on its own. Yeah. Then we are saying that there's a certain, go ahead.
Well, I would just say what you're doing here, what you're talking about, is you're kind of jumping around between the beginning of life and modern life, and building this flimsy bridge between them, and saying, well, this bridge is too flimsy, it doesn't make any sense. How did we get to seeds that want to grow into plants. And I know what you mean by want. I get that. I'm not, but like just for the other people listening, we don't literally mean the seeds have desires, but I know what you mean because I use the same language all the time.
No.
But like you're looking at things today that are remarkably complex and the result of a lot of evolutionary history and saying, how can we get here? And it's very similar to when people say like, well, the human eye is so remarkable and so perfect. And how can random chance make this? As if
it's
things
not random
went
chance,
from,
though.
Right. I understand. I'm giving you a little bit of a straw man here just to kind of like help summarize things. Forgive me. I'm not trying to be uncharitable with your point. But like it's the way that you're presenting this argument. It's as if you were saying, we went from a worm with no eyes all of a sudden to something with a complex eye like ours, and not all the steps in the middle. So when you talk about where life came from,
that's not really what I'm saying, though. I'm saying why does the worm want to do what? What gave us the function? What gave us the? I mean, let's say the earliest piece of life ever. And I hate to interrupt you because I really do respect your show, and I hate when other people do it to you.
You're good,
but I'm really trying to clarify this point for you because. If we say the earliest piece of life, and depending on which view you believe in, which, I can sort of agree with the one mostly with like asteroids having molecules in it that might have had carbon life in them, right?
Oh, that's just
where did that carbon?
That just kicks it further back in the past.
Yeah, it is fair to say that like I would say it is fair to say that like the major building blocks of the four major macromolecules of life do self-assemble and have all been found in space. We found all 5 nucleotides on asteroids. We found sugars. We found fatty acids. We found tons of different amino acids. We need for life on Earth today uses only about the life on Earth today only uses about 20 amino acids, sometimes a couple extras in very special circumstances. But like we only have about 20 amino acids. There's over 500 amino acids that we've identified, and they've found them all over space all the fucking time. And so like, in terms of getting life started, all of the pieces of life naturally occur. And all you need is for those pieces to bump into each other in the right order, which given some time is bound to happen. And what's really interesting to me is just how quickly life began once it was able to. The Earth first formed about 4.6 billion years ago, and the first around billion years of that was the Hadean period, where we had what was called the late heavy bombardment. The Earth was just getting pummeled all day and night with rocks from space as it was clearing out its orbit around the sun. And so the whole Earth was this molten hellscape. No life could have existed on that planet. The second the planet cooled, we get life. Like as soon as it's possible for life to be here, life pops up within just a couple 100 million years, remarkably quickly. That, to me, is strong evidence that this is a very possible natural process, given the fact that it didn't take millions or I should say billions and billions of years. Remarkably, relatively quickly, life gets started here.
And my guess is Camden's question then is, why is that so? That points him, I'm guessing, Camden, to there being some sort of purpose behind it, because why does the universe, such as it is, have amino acids in the building blocks of life be so easily or so rapidly convert into life? You're saying the fact that these materials exist and that the physics and the chemistry are such that it can happen is, for you, pointing to life. And I think this is a kind of the anthropic principle, like that, looking back as the fact that we are here, the fact that life is possible, is for you evidence of an intelligent designer in some way, right? Of a deistic God that set this all in motion billions of years ago because we have life. And I guess our position is we can't make that extra leap. If the universe weren't this way, we wouldn't be here asking the question. Is that where you're going, Camden?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not expecting, an answer, like the, but I think you really have described that to me in a good way. And I think I'm sort of starting to see eye to eye with, the atheist viewpoint, which is, I'm not trying to ramble here, but funnily enough, I literally had watched a video, and it kind of made me think a certain way. Have you guys ever heard of the non-stamp collector?
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't matter. I watched one of his videos, and then I watched another one. I was like, damn, this stuff's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I just decided out of nowhere I was going to call you guys. And sure enough, you guys just started your live stream. And I hadn't listened to you guys in like a year. So it was pretty awesome that
it must be God
randomly
leading you.
like,
Jesus is real, Camden.
I can't help it. I can't help it. There has to be a meaning to that, right?
Well, Camden, I guess our position is that we recognize that the universe exists in such a way that life develops from non-life. We don't know when it happened. We know that it happened because here we are. And we don't accept a supernatural cause for this kicking off. And the difference between, I think, the theist perspective and the atheist perspective is that rather than say, I know how it happened because magic man live in sky, magic man make thing happen, right? And we're like, we don't know exactly how it happened, but we know it's here, and we're going to keep on investigating to figure out the mechanism. Forrest has got a book, though.
Yeah, well, I was gonna. Do we have time? Johnny, you're the host today. Do you have time for me to read a thing very quickly?
Of course.
It's only about a paragraph.
For you, Forrest.
So this is something that I think is really cool, and it's just something that I remember when I was very first starting on my first degree. This is something that I read, and it meant a lot to me, and I think it's pretty neat. This is from The Mysterious Universe by James Jeans, and he writes, "Standing on our microscopic fragment of a grain of sand, we attempt to discover the nature and purpose of the universe which surrounds our home in time and space. Our first impression is something akin to terror. We find the universe terrifying because of its vast, meaningless distances, terrifying because of its inconceivably long vistas of time which dwarf human history to the twinkling of an eye, terrifying because of our extreme loneliness, and because of the material insignificance of our home in space. 1/1,000,000th part of a grain of sand out of all the sea sand in the world. But above all else, we find the universe terrifying because it appears to be indifferent to life like our own. Emotion, ambition, achievement, art, and religion all seem equally foreign to its plan. Perhaps, indeed, we ought to say that it appears to be actively hostile to life like our own. For the most part, empty space is so cold that all life in it would be frozen. Most of the matter in space is so hot as to make life on it impossible. As space is traversed, the astronomical bodies continually are bombarded by radiation and a variety of kinds, much of which is probably inimical to, or even destructive, of life. Into such a universe we have stumbled, if not exactly by mistake, at least as the result of what may probably be best described as an accident. The use of such a word need not imply any surprise that our Earth exists, for accidents will happen. And if the universe goes on for long enough, every conceivable accident is likely to happen in time. It was, I think, Huxley. He wrote, I think. I hate that. But it was, I think, Huxley who said that 6 monkeys setting to strum unintelligently on typewriters for millions and millions of years would be bound in time to write all the books in the British Museum. If we examined the last page which a particular monkey had typed and found that it chanced in its blind strumming to type a Shakespearean sonnet, we should rightly regard the occurrence as a remarkable accident. But if we looked through the millions of pages that the monkeys had turned off in untold millions of years, we might be sure of finding a Shakespeare sonnet somewhere amongst them, the product of blind play of chance. So he says there at the end, if you look at all of the pages they made, you wouldn't say, wow, this one page was an accident and crazy and remarkable. You would say, of course this page exists. Look at all the other pages. And you can see that if you Google the Library of Babylon, they just have every possible random permutation of the English alphabet, and you can go on the Library of Babylon's website and type in anything you want and guarantee they've already got it. They've already typed it out because it's every random permutation of every letter in the English alphabet. And that's exactly what James Joyce is saying here, or James Jean is saying here, is that, in the universe, we see a planet like our own, and we're like, fuck, this must be magical and special. Look at the universe around us. But at the end of the day, you could say the same thing about wherever you were born. 70% of the earth is covered in water, and only like 1% of that water is fresh water that's available to drink. If you're born on a patch of arable land next to a river that you can drink out of, you would surely think this spot was made specially for me, because look at the rest of the world around me. It's terrible. But that's how it is in the universe. We look at the universe around us and we think, wow, Earth is magical because it's the only place with life. But when we see the sheer scale of this place, the fact isn't it's freaky that this is a planet with life. The freaky fact is that there aren't bazillions more that we found so far. And that's a whole other question called the Fermi paradox. But like, that's, I think that's important.
That Kurt Sagat video.
Yeah.
You what?
I said I watched that Kurt Sagat video.
Oh, I didn't know they made one. That's great.
Yeah. There's some good stuff there too. Camden, last thoughts.
There is some good shit.
Last thoughts.
So I realize most of this conversation has been focused mainly upon determinism. You know, the monkeys and the typewriting, and eventually everything will come to be. Or, you know, if you knew what every brain, reptilian brain, human brain, animal brain, mammal brain, and you could see them all, and you could see what your mother had for breakfast when she was 9 and what she ate, you know, before she had you, you could probably determine what the next words in my mouth are, because you can keep going all the way back to the native days when my ancestors decided to go across a land bridge or not. But, and I hope I haven't lost you there, but no. I'm saying from a non-deterministic viewpoint, we can see, and I apologize, I'm gonna combine Eastern and Western philosophies for a moment, but if we have like the 7 deadly sins, and even things such as the Bhagavad Gita tell us to stay away from things like eating too much or sleeping too much, or, you know, these sort of passions, fulfilling these desires, and that if you continue to fulfill too many of them, you're left with a life of like unfulfilledness. Despite fulfilling all your desires, you're unfulfilled. So doesn't this also kind of point to the idea that maybe there's something a bit more than what meets the eye? Like that there isn't just this recipe to humans, that it takes more than what we think?
I don't think so. I don't think it points to it. I think what it points to is that there are certain biological constants throughout human history, and that we need food, we need water, we have a brain that has developed in the hunting and gathering and the various other agricultural skills. We've developed it in such a way that we can, despite our fragility, physical fragility, our brain is able to overcompensate for that, or compensate for that, and be the most successful organism besides, you know, bacteria and ants and stuff, to sort of dictate the terms of our future, the conditions under which our species exists. And the fact that we see it throughout different cultures is merely a reflection of the fact that I don't care if you're in Papua New Guinea or if you're in, you know, Walla Walla, Washington, you've got the same needs. The brain follows certain patterns. Speech seems to be a function of it, maybe an offshoot of various neurological developments over the last, you know, couple billion years or million years. And our ancestors have arrived at the same problems, right? You eat too much, you become, you run into certain problems. You do nothing, your body decays, or your muscles decay, you're unable to function. I think it's just, here's the thing. If there became a radical change in human biology and human neurology and such, I think we would see radical changes in virtue and vice. What constitutes virtue, what constitutes vice. But there hasn't been one. Since the earliest times, even our other primate cousins, we're subject to the same possibilities physically and consequences. And so that's why it just seems to be a universal truth. We talk about these objective morals. I think they're tied inexorably and to the biological reality. That's how I see it, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep any more of y'all's time.
Hey, you're great, Camden. Thank you so much for being.
I absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
No, I was just going to say I've absolutely enjoyed talking to you all. I've always wanted to call you. I didn't want to call you when I was 13. You would not have wanted to hear the mess I was going to spill.
Maybe not.
But
we're happy to
I
have you
wouldn't
now.
want to talk to me at 13
much
either.
older.
Yeah. Oh, that was
Now that I've
insufferable.
matured a lot more, I feel like this was a great didactic conversation.
Camden, you're great. You take care. We're going to let you go.
Call
callers
back
out
again
there.
sometime, though, for real.
Oh, please do. Callers out there, this is a focused call. This is what we're talking about. No offense, Ray, but tighten your beam there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop Camden, and I'm going to tell you something. We got merchandise. I'm sorry, we got podcasts first. We have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. And there you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk, Heathen Truth, Wanted Nonprofits, and all the other shows we've ever done on one channel. All right, Forrest, you brought this up before. We got some super chats.
We have a bunch of them.
Go read them for us, won't you?
Glob, we have so many. So we've got, we'll start from the top here. Oh, flip, dude. We've got $4.99 from, is it Gaze Husky? Presuppositionalist apologists are the sovereign citizens of the God debate. They think they're entitled to their own rules, to logic, to facts, of logic, fact, and reality. I get that.
I don't consent. Go on.
Pastel Princess Gracie. It's weird. We were talking about sovereign citizens for the show. Pastel Princess Gracie sent $5. The worst I've seen. Children who die in childhood are going to grow up to be evil, so God killed them anyway so they can go to heaven. One of the things that made me an anti-theist back when I was still on the fence and was kind of like, well, I know I don't believe, but, religions are beautiful and all these things. A friend of mine, his daughter died. She was like barely a month old. And I went to the funeral, and the preacher got up there and said, it's such a wonderful thing that she died so early so that she didn't have a chance to sin yet. And I was just absolutely, oh my God, I left.
That's a death cult for you, Forrest. That's a death cult if there was
evil.
one. Yep.
Gaze Husky sent another $1.99. God is even more obsessed with penises than I am. Well, it's Gayest Husky.
Gayest.
I see now. Gayest Husky. You think about that. The gayest of them all. Dragon Fairy, $2. Excited to see Forrest. I'm excited to be here. First time watching live. Well, thank you so much for doing so. Miranda Rensberger sent $5. If Forrest leaves a sandwich in the closet and it disappears, did Roland eat it, or did Forrest's wife throw it out before it went bad? Can we ever know? No, we can't. And that's the mystery. That's the magic. And to look into it is blasphemous. Chris, $5. If atheists are the worst thing in the world, why are all babies born atheists? Checkmate, theists. I mean,
they hate God. They hate God.
You know what, though? As many people like Ray who call in and say all babies are born atheists and hate God, I have also been heard the argument on, I believe, this show that we are all born loving God, and it's only later on in sin that we become atheists.
Oh, those people are wrong for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Ray is wronger.
He's got it.
Fen Lovebond sent $2. Look at Johnny P with the geek cred. I believe that's when you were talking about your in-depth knowledge of J.R.R. Tolkien lore.
Yeah.
Which I loved, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you started it, man. You said Sauron.
Dragon Fairy sent $2 to say we need more puns from Forrest. In time. I'll bring plenty of them to you. Fern Lovebound, I just thought of like 3 that I can't say on this show. Fern Lovebond sent $2. Amoral and kinky fund supply. Those are words. Andrew Sword sent $6.66. Forrest, I've heard in passing that the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis might explain transgender people. Love you too, Johnny. I will just post. So like this, I'm not a neuroscientist. However, there are neuroscientists that talk about the neuroscience of being trans. So here's like a 50-minute lecture from Robert Sapolsky. I had this pulled up already because I saw the super chat came in earlier, and so I just pulled these up. So I have them. There's like a 50-minute video, and here's like a 5-minute video of the same neuroendocrinologist from Stanford describing gender in the brain, and saying over and over that like if someone's genotype says this and their genitalia say this and their whatever else, but their brain says that, I'm gonna trust their brain. And I've gotten into many an argument with many a person about whether or not that's accurate. And again, I'm a biological anthropologist. I study biomedical sciences. I study evolutionary biology. I study all these things. Neuroscience is a little bit outside of my scope, so I want to make sure I'm just referring to other people before I give. I don't want to just give my ideas.
Yeah.
But look that up. It's cool stuff. Also, the bread nucleus of striatum analysis, as well as several other brain regions, can be found in Joan Roughgarden's Evolution's Rainbow. Joan Roughgarden is also a biologist from Stanford, and this book details out a lot of cool stuff about trans and intersex people. She also, I believe, has some stuff in there about like theistic evolution that some people don't like, but like if you just dig into the science, it's cool. Blur. We've got. Sorry,
I was just gonna say, there's so many books that take a fine-tooth comb to these topics. And so often we get callers who are like, well, I was just sitting in my lazy boy and I was thinking about, like, that's not how we know things about the world. Why would you think that's acceptable? Come on, do better, people. Call in. Read the books at least.
What gets me is when people talk about sex and gender as if they're the same thing. They've always been the same thing. I always use the terms interchangeable. Like, cool.
Yeah.
You use terms synonymously when they don't need to be. It's like saying, well, I always use the word theory to describe where my socks might be going when I lose them in the dryer. So therefore, the theory of the evolution doesn't mean anything because it's just a theory. It's like, yeah, that's a stupid way to use the word. Now you have a stupid consequence.
My first crayon box had 10 colors. Therefore, there's only 10 colors in the rainbow. In the spectrum of colors. So checkmate. All evidence that might contradict that. But we have more.
Oh.
Do we have more?
Also, we have more. We've got Janet Moorcraft. You chose to wait this long. We got Janet Moorcraft sent in $9.99 of her cents to say, I was disgusted to hear that a district in Texas was substituting preachers for guidance counselors. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of religion in school. We talk about on this, in this space about how we have a separation of church and state in public schools and how you're not allowed to have to. Brother, I grew up in Oklahoma, and I've taught in plenty of schools in Oklahoma, either as a substitute teacher or as an enrichment teacher or as a special guest, doing workshops, classrooms, stage shows, you name it. And the amount of Bible quotes written on the board as a daily lesson in public schools here in Oklahoma, you wouldn't believe me if I tried to guess at the number that I've seen. So just, the amount of students that are in school without a counselor, without a psychiatrist, without a therapist, without lunch money, but with a preacher or a cop. Boy, howdy, does it make me sad. Sharon, I can't read that really. Brashear. I'm going to call it Brashear, and if your name isn't Brashear, it is now. $10 to say, I'm a new atheist, and I'm scared to come out. I come from a very religious Pentecostal background. Do y'all have any advice? Be safe and be yourself, and don't let anybody walk all over you. If you're in a situation with a family or a community where it would actually put you in physical danger to come out as atheist, doesn't just keep it quiet if you have to. But also, if you're able to safely talk about atheism and be open about it, as many people are, but there are some people that are. But if you're able to talk about it, I say be unabashed about it. And the people who mind won't matter, and the people who matter don't mind. Yeah,
and don't feel pressured. Don't feel pressured to do it. Do it on your own time. No. Life can be long. You got plenty of time.
Absolutely. Yep. There's still. I have people in my wife's family that don't know that I'm an atheist because it would just make them very sad, and it wouldn't change anything for them. So, like, what's the point of me telling them? You know what I mean? It's not going to change anything for me. They sing their church songs. They have crosses all over their house. I come there and I give them a hug, and I'm fine. You know what I mean? It's just every time I'm teaching, I always think, who am I actually talking to, and what's the point of what I'm saying? And I think it's the same thing about coming out as an atheist. Who are you telling and why? And if you're being open and honest to yourself, that's important. Ryan the Longchamp, as opposed to Ryan the Shortchamp, sent $10 to say, I absolutely love how Forrest can literally be shouting with a smile on his face and also laughing. It's a great skill. I effing want that. It's not even just shouting. I'm just a loud person. Monkey at Typewriter sent $2. When are you gonna why you gotta tell people how I work, dude? Yeah. I appreciate you letting me read all of those things. It's such a poetic, beautiful written thing that I could summarize, but like, who wants to hear my shit? You know what I mean? Inglaba sent 5 theoretical dollars. For it says pounds. I don't believe in England, so just 5 somethings.
Never been there.
Forrest, you're a hero. Thank you. I'd love to help you spread your message by offering for free Italian subs for your videos. Interested? How can I contact you? And then we've got Super Chat, Filthy Rich Punk, for $4.99, Forrest and Johnny. Of all the miracles in the Bible, which miracle was the greatest miracle that Jesus actually did by convincing the world he exists? Are you asking this for us to make a joke, or are you the fucking 7-day calendar guy telling us that there's Jesus predicted 7 days and therefore Jesus is real?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that one. 7 days. That's the one that convinced me that Jesus is real.
I love the last time I was on the show, I was on with Jamie the Blind Limey, and that guy called in, and I told him that I didn't accept his premise and made arguments against that. Jamie told him he didn't accept his conclusions. Even if he granted his premise, his conclusions didn't make sense. And we just sat there and just told him over and over, I don't believe what you're saying is true. And we tried to ask questions, and all he kept doing over and over was going, you guys are panicking. You're so mad right now. You're so angry. You're so and we're just like, okay, so why do you think that it was great to see what happened when he didn't get hung up on. I don't think he knew what to do. Austin Arnold sent $10. Glad I could catch a live show. This show and specifically Forrest has helped me so much in my atheist journey. Thank you. I am a flashlight to disbelief. Understanding my religion. My atheist journey, understanding of religion and conversations with people about religion. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry the text is so small and I stumbled through what you're saying. If I knew how to fix it, I would, but I'm a very old man. And the last one is $5 Is it Australian dollars? Is it Armenian dollars? Is it Albanian dollars? Is it ass dollars? 5 ass dollars from Renaissance. Knowing what you do about polygraph tests, if you're accused of a crime, would you agree to take one to avoid the social backlash of not taking one? No, because polygraphs are pseudoscientific nonsense. And all they don't tell whether or not you're lying. They tell whether or not you're nervous. And you're going to be nervous when you're in a fucking polygraph test. So, no, I would not take one. And if anybody talked about the social backlash about it, I would just give a science lesson about the history of polygraph tests and why they're not admissible in lots of courts.
Yeah, if you find yourself in a situation where people are asking you to take a polygraph test, just consult with your attorney. Don't make that decision based upon our representations here.
Remember, I'm not a lawyer, but my legal advice, if you're arrested, is shut up. And that's all I would say. If your polygraph test does not sound like shutting up, just shut up. And that's the rule.
We're gonna go on to our next call, and we're gonna talk to Andrew, who's a guy out of Florida, and he says religion gives meaning to our suffering. Atheism makes our suffering meaningless. Please, Andrew, tell Forrest and me what you mean by that.
Yeah, suffering is a calling. It is a journey. It is a test and a trial. But under an evolutionary worldview, an atheist worldview, suffering is just nothing. We're just products of nature. So you invalidate our suffering and you invalidate our experience.
I agree, actually, with some of what you said, but not all of it. Johnny, do you have something?
I think that I will say this. To the extent that religion gives meaning to our suffering, I would say that religion gives a rhetorical framework for suffering that might help a person weave that suffering into a narrative of a worldview in some way to help a person endure it if they find that there's meaning, I guess. Atheism does not have that narrative, and to the extent that it has a narrative, it's relatively cold. But humanism, on the other hand, which is not the opposite of atheism, is non-belief in a religion, not belief in a God claim. But humanism would seek to I suppose, take into account the totality of the human experience and find not only a way to contextualize the suffering that you're going from a human perspective and encapsulate the tragedy of suffering, but also humanism seeks to eliminate unnecessary, heedless suffering, right? Mm-hmm. Religion doesn't really do that. It just kind of explains away that this suffering that you're enduring doesn't really matter because the real life is somewhere else. So, yeah, that's my initial thought.
Yeah, I actually said I agree with some of what you said, Andrew, and I use the word agree a little bit loosely because like I could dig into it and be real nitpicky with some of it, as I like to do lots of times because I'm a pedantic asshole. But like I think that, you know, when you talk about religion giving meaning to suffering and seeing suffering as this calling and all these things, like surely that's what the belief is. Whether or not it's true, if religion is putting it in that context and that's what religion's trying to do for itself, sure. And atheism, I understand the way that you're using the word seems to just be like the rejection of all these religious principles and like this blanket worldview. I'm actually, so like you can talk about philosophy, I'm a nihilist. I'm a cosmic nihilist. Cosmic nihilism is the general belief in like that all things are meaningless because of the vast scale of the universe. It's so big, it's so crazy. There's no room for us in it as a meaningful thing because nothing has any meaning. Holy crap, I am looking real granular on my screen. I'm so sorry. I having some connection issues, it looks like. So I'm fine with that assertion. My then backup question would be, what's the issue with that? Because me not thinking that there's any meaning to human suffering or human existence in general, that I think that's a good thing in my opinion. That's a big part of my philosophy that I think makes me a better person. So you're calling in with this proposition that atheism makes our suffering meaningless. Johnny, I think, gave you a great breakdown on why that's a problematic claim in the first place. But even if I accept what you're saying, I don't see why that's a problem at all. I'm now going to refresh quickly, so I'll be right back.
Yeah. What is thy response, Andrew, to that?
That's harmful. And if the ideology is harmful, how can it's less likely to be true?
Okay. Well, it's harmful. I'll tell you what, I don't think it's harmful because I think that religion has been used by powerful groups of people to convince people that they should be suffering because of the conditions of the world, because of disparities of wealth, disparities of opportunity amongst different peoples in society. And you should just accept that your suffering serves a greater purpose. Don't try to fight the system. Don't try to change the world. Just accept your lot in life, you second-class person. And the humanist says, that's bunk. Let's make society better. Let's eliminate needless suffering. Let's provide synthetic limbs to amputees. Let's find cures to sickle cell anemia. That was in the news recently, right? Let's not just pray to accept that we suffer and others have it better. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's try to fix the problem. So I would argue that the atheist humanist perspective is the only healthy perspective on suffering because we want to root out the causes of suffering and, if possible, fix it. What do you think to that?
That's a good point.
Thank you.
If this is the only life we have, I can see how the humanist, worldview can say, okay, let's eliminate the suffering.
Yeah.
Like, because this is all it is. So that's a good one. That's a good one.
Hey, Andrew, can you give us a specific example of suffering? And let's talk about that, not just suffering in general, but first of all, can you get off speakerphone?
I'm on Bluetooth headphones.
Okay, get off Bluetooth headphones. Go straight to your phone, please. Call screener told you not to do that. No offense, but you done broke the rules. Talk directly into your phone because we got people at home that are trying to listen, and that's kind of hard to hear.
Okay. I'm here.
Okay, you're better. So give us a specific example of suffering that you believe religion sublimates and makes it a beautiful thing. And we'll talk about it from a secular, humanist, atheist perspective. Okay?
Well, I'm in a rough marriage, So, and we believe in the doctrine of indissolubility of marriage. And I'm staying together, for the family, for the kids. So my job, my role as a father and husband is to suffer in this, rough marriage. So for the overall happiness of the kids and the family and the community. And, maybe on my deathbed, I'd say, hey, I kept it through with my wife.
Okay. All right.
And we're all together. So I kept the unity. You've
given me something to latch on to with my little pit bull face. Okay. Okay. I'm not going to give you marriage advice. What the hell do I know about marriage advice? But I can tell you from a person from divorced parents that the kids will be affected if the relationship between the parents is dysfunctional. I'm not saying that they'd be more affected or less affected, but don't think that the fact that we stayed together is the thing that made things work. It's false. I would advise you to consult with a therapist to talk about the well-being of yourself, your partner, and your children, and staying with your partner despite the fact that you're in a bad or difficult relationship. It's not a given. It's not a given that that's the right thing to do. There are so many factors. And sometimes people hit rough spots in their relationships and they can work it out with healthy therapy and cooperative action. And sometimes they get separated, they get divorced, and then the kids have two healthy households. Okay? The parents can learn how to co-parent, and then they can learn that when they get into relationships someday, they're not stuck there. They're not stuck in a loveless, maybe unhealthy relationship, and they're prisoners of that. Like they because people change, they grow apart. Look at me, Mr. Love Guru over here. But quite honestly, that's something that a therapist would provide better therapeutic advice for, something that you probably need to give more specifics than I want to take on this call. I don't want to get into how it's difficult. But you could derive some meaning, and the meaning is that you're trying to provide for your family. And I would suggest that it's not given that that's a good thing. And you may be doing the right thing, you may not, and that's a bad example for what we're talking about today. You got something else? You got another example besides your marriage? And I'm sorry to hear about it. It happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens to the worst of us, and everyone in between. Got another example? All right, not hearing another example. So we're going to move on.
Yeah, I have. I have one.
Oh, give it to me. Give it to me.
Okay, you go to work. You go to work every day. You're suffering. You're 9 to 5, but you have to work and suffer to pay your bills. So you're fulfilling Adam's call, the call from God given to Adam and Eve to provide and work to the sweat of your brow. So religion gives you that comfort of, okay, I'm busting it, but we're called to bust it. We're called to suffer. It gives us perseverance.
Okay.
That's not a call from God. That's a call from capitalism.
It's a call from capitalism. I got one for that too there, Andrew. Okay. The fact is that the people with hegemonic power in society have vested interest in maintaining a certain status quo. And that status quo keeps people within their sort of informal economic castes where they continue in jobs that maybe they hate. Maybe they hustle and they get to a job that makes a little bit more money. I happen to like my job. I've been very fortunate that way. I haven't always been that way, and I'm one of the lucky ones, okay? A humanist, not one of these anti-humanist atheists out there in YouTube land. They exist. They know who they are. They don't care about that kind of stuff. They don't care about the well-being of individuals in society. They have their own interests, or they care a different way. Let's put it that way. At least those of us here would work for social justice so that people have some sort of mobility, so that they can both A, maintain the basic means of existence, the way they can pay their bills, get food, electricity, whatever they need, and then move to a place they like better. I'm not a communist or anything like that, but but I've certainly studied it more than maybe Ray has, and I know that we have plenty of socialist aspects to our democratic republic in our economic system. We have a safety net of sorts that works and doesn't work to varying degrees in different avenues of life. And so the only meaning I derive from my work is I'm intellectually stimulated. It pays the bills that I'm forced to pay to live the kind of life that I want to live. And if you are in a spot where you hate your life because you hate your work and you hate your marriage, then maybe we humanists should construct a society that gives people the ability to move to a place. Got to make a move to a town that's right for me. To quote Lips Inc., okay? We want Funky Town Forest. We need a little bit more.
That is the atheist paradise.
Yeah, it was playing before the show started, I believe. So, yeah, the status quo people, the religious conservative types, don't want to make those changes. They're fine where they're at. And to the extent that they're not, they convince themselves that there's a better life someplace else. And I think it's gross. What are your thoughts on that? He's thinking.
There's temporary solutions, but in the grand scheme of things, like eventually, like we know that most people will not be able to socialist utopian dream. All of us will suffer in one way or another, no matter what. It's inevitable.
Sure.
So
what?
Yeah.
What's frustrating to me, Andrew, is that like I was having some connection issues earlier, but the last thing that I said was that I don't think there's any meaning to suffering, nor do I think there's any meaning to life or existence in general. I think that it's all completely just meaningless. It's just here. It's just stuff that happens. And I don't see an issue with that. And when I came in, it sounded like Johnny was saying exactly what I was going for there, which is if there is no I don't know if this is where he came from on it because I missed half of it, but it sounded like what he was saying is that because there's, this is a meaningless structure, we can decide what to do with it. And we can decide how many people are we going to let be homeless anymore, how many people are we going to let go hungry anymore, how many ecosystems are we going to fuck up anymore, how many children are going to starve anymore, like how many things are we going to let go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We can take control of it. We can reduce suffering. We can care for people around us. Because there is no meaning, we can then decide to make it whatever we want, and we can make a better society and make a better future. And what you've come back at us with, like your argument in response is, well, I hate my marriage and I hate my job, but that's a good thing. And I don't see how those are equal stances, whereas we're saying, be happy, do what's best for people around you. Care if you're talking about supporting your family, support them in a way that makes you a more full and fulfilled and happy, well-developed person, and that is going to be a benefit to them. If you hate your job, find a thing that you can do that makes you a better person, that fulfills your need inside to be whatever you want to be, that stimulates you intellectually and emotionally, because a person who's working like that is going to do better work and is going to make the world a better place. Everything you're giving us here is just like, this is my parochial, religious, capitalistic view. Yeah. And if I think of anything else outside of that, it sounds icky. So I'm going to stick with this. And we're just trying to share with you that there's lots of other ways to do things and lots of good reasons to do them in better ways.
And Andrew, to piggyback on that, to the extent that you are, it is not available to you to make a job shift that you would like to make. And that's probably the majority of all humans. They're stuck with what they've got, and they can make a little bit of wiggle room. We in this community don't like that. We, generally speaking, want to create a society where a person can follow their bliss, man, or to some degree, like go to a place where they're getting more, like their whole life is meaningful. Right? Recognizing, of course, that is not a reality for the majority of human beings on Earth, and that's not right, but that's how it is right now. The status quo conservative types, tough nuts is what they might say, right? Well, that's not what I say, and it's not what Forrest is saying either. So, what's your thoughts to that?
No, it's very kind and compassionate. I like the solutions, temporary solutions. I can't disagree with that. So
I like it, Andrew.
I have one more. I have one more question.
Yeah,
I have one more question before we move on, Andrew. Really quickly, if you didn't believe in a God, if you didn't believe in an afterlife, if you believed that this was the only life you had, and there was nobody watching over you with a tally book keeping track of all your deeds, all right, what would you do with your life? And what would you do for your family? And what would you do as a career? And what would you do with the little bit of life that you had, knowing that it was all that you had? Would you be a selfish jerk, or would you try to make the world a little bit better and do what's right for the people you love? Would you do any different in terms of that kind of morality or anything like that?
I would do the same thing. Bust it, love those close to me, be good to others, and try to make the best of it. I would do the same thing.
Hey,
great.
Hey, look, we're going to let you go, Andrew. I hope that you do consult with somebody to figure out what you're going to do. If your marriage is salvageable, I hope you fix it. If it isn't, I hope you go part to the extent that you can, raise those kids, and find meaning in every moment of your life. I don't like it when I'm going through Discovery and I'm reviewing documents and I'm going through thousands of pages, but there is an element of deferred gratification where I know if I put in the time here, I get to work on other stuff and I get to do other things that I enjoy there. And that's a reality under capitalism, and probably is a reality in any system, because someone's got to review the Discovery, right?
The Discovery.
Someone's got to do the Discovery.
That's what I'm hoping. That's all I wanted to get across with that last question, is that, it doesn't matter if there's meaning. You can find meaning without meaning. And I wish more religious people understood that.
I was talking about this the other day with some friends that actually I was talking with Objectively Dan last night, my buddy out there. Hey, he didn't shout me out on Truth Wanted this last Friday, but I'm shouting him out, and I'm going to tell him that I did so. We were talking
every week that he doesn't shout me out, I'm a little bit more hurt and dead inside. That's
Dan,
yeah.
Or calling you out, Dan.
I've only ever watched the show the one time that I was on it as well. Dan,
well we're gonna fix that. We're gonna do some jiggery poker. We're gonna get you teasing. But if everyone out there with the ability to do so did a little bit for the betterment of society, and I'm not saying that something grand, something huge, invent something new, but do something, right? The world will be a lot better place. And I've got a whole bunch of friends that do a whole lot of nothing. The work that they do is important, but they're so busy doing that thing. If we could, in our society, find a way to put a premium not on the acquisition of wealth or entertainment, and I'm guilty of that too, but find some real deep, meaningful satisfaction from doing something. I don't know what it is. Picking up litter, teaching kids how to read that aren't your own damn kids. Right? Imagine there's how many billions of people are there for us in the world?
8
billion people, and a lot of those people they're living hand to mouth. They don't have that wiggle room. But if we all, instead of getting the new latest technology, we spent some of that time helping our neighbors, I think the world would be a better place. And a lot of people do a lot of good stuff, but maybe we need a little bit more of that stuff.
Yeah. That's the whole thing, man. Yeah. It's like people talk about, but anytime we talk about taking care of homeless people, they're like, well, how many homeless people do you let live in your house? And it's like as if I'm personally responsible for the entire situation. If there's a big rock that needs to be moved, you can yell at one person for not moving it alone, or you can all put one finger on it and move it all together. And that's what I see in society. I think any society where anybody has to struggle for food, water, shelter, medicine is failing. Yeah. And I think we can do a lot better. But that's bordering on political things that we can't talk about as a 501.
Keep it in mind. Keep it in mind when you make life decisions. That's all.
There's better options.
Speaking of
while you're trying to help the world, figure out how to fix my freaking internet. Because I just checked, I've got 660 down and 35 up, and I'm still having granular picture sometimes. Fix that, God.
Forrest, this isn't going to help anything, but it's that time of year again. And when we open the ACA merchandise vault, and I'm not saying this is going to fix your uploads and downloads, but we give you an opportunity to pick up some of the limited time items you may have missed. Right now, we're featuring the 5 most popular T-shirt designs from the past year. Look at all that text. Oh, my goodness.
That's a shocking amount of text.
That's a lot of text. But anyway, hurry. The vault will only be open until the end of December. You can even use the discount code THEVAULT to get 10% off your entire purchase. So there's that. And then you can visit tiny.cc/merch ACA. Something else you can do that's not going to help with your internet is a big thank you to the crew. Let's go ahead and show the crew up here.
Hey.
There they are. They put the show together every week, and we love them. Some of them are actually here at the library where I'm at, and some of them are in their own personal bat caves, wherever that may be. There's a lot of people here, and one man, the man who pulls the strings, the bottom left corner. We love him. So there's that. Now, let's go here into the call list. And we've got some, oh gosh, there's that guy I don't want to talk to. The guy who I'm not going to take him. I'm not going to take 21? Yeah. Last time he was on the show, I turned him off, and I'm not going to do it. So, Forrest, I'm gonna instead, let's go ahead and talk to CJ, a guy out of Kansas.
Whiplash going to the next call. So
let's do it. I like to do it. CJ is, looking for evidence of evolution from Forrest, and has 3 concessions about evolution. And I guess this is in reference to a previous call with Forrest. CJ, here's how it's going to go real quick. Not everyone has seen that call. So
I don't remember it.
Yeah, and no offense to you. It's just we get a lot of calls. Forrest is a busy guy. He's gone to sleep since then, and you know how it is. So can you do like a little recap of the previous call, or encapsulate in this call everything you want to talk about in one little bite-sized bit?
Yeah.
Cool.
So basically, I called in with the prompt that I had some evidence for Eve's creation from Adam's rib. And then I also called in with another piece of the prompt that was saying evolution was in Genesis 1. When we read it, you said some things tracked in the Bible, but the chronological order of evolution that was accounted for, as well as the places where things were coming from as accounted for, didn't match evolution. So that was pretty much the gist of it. Other things did come up, but it's not according to the prompt. It was when we were kind of derailing, where I made certain claims, you made certain claims, and it was kind of a back and forth. So that doesn't really need to be recapped. But as far as the 3 concessions that I had actually used the term evolutionist when I was trying to kind of explain to you that I had a debate with someone who called themselves an evolutionist. I retract that statement now because I did research on the suffix "ist," and it cannot be juxtaposed with evolution at all, because the suffix "ist" is based on a belief system, and evolution isn't based on a belief system. It's a science. So I retract that. I think that person I talked to basically was, I think that person, and you did tell me that wasn't a correct term, which is why I did the research. And I think that person probably just used that term as a strategy to make sure I stayed there so he could talk to me. That's pretty much what I trumped that up to, and I'm fine with that. Okay. Also, we talked, and you guys had told me that one of the reasons you were interjecting so many times was because some of the things I was introducing wasn't different than any other Christian had tried to pass you guys as evidence. I didn't believe that, but I did watch about, believe it or not, 8 hours worth of the show, going all the way back to when it was granular, like you were complaining about your internet. And I retract that statement as well. I did bring up some things that you guys have it's probably incessant to you now, the fact that the same old arguments are being brought up. So that I concede as well. I do want to say the reason why I thought that I was bringing up a different argument is because in my experience, even though I do understand this is the atheist experience, in my theist experience, I was coming across Christians that had 2 major problems. either one, they were in a cult and they had no idea they were, and they were being controlled by the quote unquote church building they were in, or two, they were very deep into mainstream pop culture of what's supposed to be accepted as Christianity, rather than actually studying the Bible for themselves. So because of those two things combined, I thought that I was presenting you guys with different evidence, but I wasn't. So that was just a mishap in my own experience. And then as far as the third concession, Jamie and yourself was on the call, and he told me that some of the things I was introducing sounded like post hoc rationalization. And I misheard you guys because I didn't know that when I talked at the same time you guys talk, that you couldn't hear me until I rewatched the video. And I thought you guys said that I came to my faith due to post hoc rationalization because I was over talking you guys. But in actuality, you were saying that the prompt I introduced it sounded like post hoc rationalization. So I want to apologize because I went off on a rant on you guys, basically saying I didn't want to be considered a monolith to Christianity and how I wouldn't consider you guys a monolith as atheists. So I apologize about that too, and I do concede that the rib thing for Eve, I did do post hoc rationalization for that, but I didn't do post hoc rationalization for the whole water thing I want to talk about. But that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, this is going to be mostly Forrest responding, and this is great. I'll have something to say, I'm sure. But folks out there in the audience who are thinking about calling, believers, I don't know how the rest of this call is going to go, but this is the kind of caller we're looking for. They have a conversation, they go back, they do some additional thinking, review, research, they evaluate what they said and what we said, and they come back and the conversation develops, okay? So, again, this could go totally off the rails, CJ, but so far I'm liking what I'm hearing. So let's get rolling.
Before we get into it, I just want to take a second to sincerely thank you for thinking about what that whole call was and for parsing all this out with us. That's an awesome way. And I do remember a lot of that call with you describing it this way. So let's hear what you have to say today and let's talk about evolution. Whatever your evidence that you're looking for, I can probably help out.
Okay, yeah. So the two major things that pretty much caught my interest was Jamie introduced that the chronological order of the accounts in Genesis 1 didn't track, and then you introduced that the places from where the creatures or creations, quote unquote, were coming from also didn't track. So those two things is what I'm mostly interested in. But I do also recall you saying that you were interested in my other piece of evidence, which was about water and how that related to evolution. And that's when I went into the whole deep study thing, and I basically irritated you guys.
Okay. So I do remember that a little bit because just to recap for everybody watching that hasn't watched the other one, I can't remember which one's which, but I think it's Genesis 1. God makes everything from Genesis 1:20. God says, "Let the waters bring forth all the moving creature that has life and birds that fly in the air." And then in Genesis 2, it says, "From the ground, God made all the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air." And so I remember that was one of the sticking points we had. In that, chronologically speaking, birds came. We can say animals started in the water and moved up onto land. That's fine, but birds certainly not. So we were way past the land part, but by the time birds came along. And then I remember you saying that like the word water has some significant meaning that's a little bit deeper than what it seems to be saying here. So tell us what your argument is. We're already a little bit over time, so just give us your best like introduction to where you're getting at here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I was hoping I'd be able to go through the scriptures, but that's okay, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm just throwing something out there. But
sure.
There are some scriptures in the book of John, some scriptures in Genesis, and some scriptures in the book of 1 John, which, when studied, it's about, I would say, 5 to 8 scriptures total. When studied, it turns out that Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, where water is introduced before anything is created. so basically day zero, so to speak. That water is attributed to Jesus Christ. So in verse 2, the Trinity
the
is
water
actually
comes from Jesus, or the water is Jesus?
attributed to Jesus.
So Jesus
It's very
made the water.
complicated. I can't explain it. That's a better way of saying it. He didn't make it, but it's a manifestation from Jesus.
Okay.
Very difficult to explain. Yeah, it's very difficult to explain. I don't want to do it right now because last time I tried that, we went way over time.
CJ, let me say this. The people who wrote John and those later parts of the Bible, right, they were later in time than the people who formulated the Genesis account, right? And they had access to that when they wrote their works, right? It wasn't they thought it out of nothing. They were referring to something. And I don't know if this is where you're going, but I have to think that if I have access to a previous text and if I want to develop the previous text, I'm going to use the previous text and I'm going to start hearkening back to that previous text and try to continue the thought, right? I'm in the middle of reading Proust right now, again, because I like to punish myself, and I'm a snob, Finer Things Club. Anyway, and things that happen in book 1 have recurring, repeated, the theme resonates, and new things happen, and the music continues, so to speak. And that's a deliberate literary choice. Now, the people who wrote the Bible, in this oral tradition, it was codified into writing, and then it was continued later on in the New Testament and so on and so forth. They had access to book 1, Swan's Way, aka Genesis. And as they developed that thinking through the rabbinical writings and in the New Testament and so on and so forth, they looked back at those early writings as inspiration and as a starting point. So is it hard to believe that all you're really seeing in that later writing is an attempt to continue the thought, and rather it doesn't sort of prove that the book of Genesis is true, but rather that it's developing the theme laid forth with now Jesus interjected. If that makes any sense.
So the best response I have for that is that I can understand you viewing it that way, simply because of the fact that you see it as a literary work.
Yeah.
But the way I view it, obviously, because I'm a theist, is that I don't simply see it as a literary work. I see it as a fulfillment.
Sure.
So I understand that what you're saying is that there is a difference, a clear difference, maybe even a questionable motive of the difference between Judaism and Christianity. But obviously, because I'm a Christian, I think that Christianity is a fulfillment of Judaism. Now, of course, I'm going to consider what you're saying and try my hardest to find some research that supports what you're saying. I just want to make sure I express that at the current moment, that is the best response I have to that.
Well said. Yes. Okay. And then I would, I don't want to sort of get too far afield, but you are a Christian. And you believe that it's not merely a literary book. And the question I have to have is, so why do you believe that it's not just a literary book? Why don't you see it that way? What information do you have to justify your belief that this is not merely so-called spiritual writings that were really just people trying to figure out a world, but that they don't have special information, I guess, right? Why do you believe that this is divinely inspired if you believe it's divinely inspired?
So I'll let you guys determine if you actually want me to respond to that or not, because I feel like it's a little bit off prompt, and it might cause us to go way too overtime again. Whether you guys allow me to continue or not, I have no problem calling in another time on a show in order to offer that evidence, or that support, I should say, since you guys might not consider that evidence. But I think it might take us off the rail. I have no problem doing it, but it's up to you guys.
No, this is people at home. This is how you do a call. CJ, I I want to hear it because that's really what we're here about, rather than the various intricacies of biblical consistency or not. We're here to get at what people believe and why, and we're getting at the why. So, with permission of the crew, let's get into it as far as we can. Okay, so give us a little bit of that. Well, let's go down that road. It may not finish today, but let's get started at least, please.
Okay, so yeah, partially you partially introduced a bit of it. It is the intricacies of the Bible that plays a large role in why I believe. One of the reasons why I kind of personally feel like I'm not relatable to many Christians is because I didn't come to the faith because of a desire for heaven's reward, and I also didn't come to the faith for fear of hell's punishment. Neither one of those reasons was why I came to the faith at all. I came to the faith purely because of belief in sin. And by the belief in sin, I even that is not typically what most Christians would consider sin. So to me, the encompassing definition of sin would be anything that leads to death. Whereas most Christians would say that sin is simply a transgression of the law. But if you study the Bible, you'll find that transgressions of the law leads to not only death, but a second death, which the Bible calls the lake of fire. And when I kind of, I guess you could say, transcended that definition, and even there's support in the Bible for this transcendence, but I'd rather just keep it simple. When I transcended that definition, I found that a lot of interactions that I was having in my own life, definitely my fault, and that I saw other people having in their life, could have been avoided if they based their life on the definition of sin, of doing things that don't lead to death. So like one of those examples, just to say it really quickly so you guys have a chance to respond, is bullying, for example. Right. Bullying leads to a form of death or a type of death. It can lead to mental death, which if you go by the definition of mental health as the ability or the capacity to process reality, people can develop mental health disorders from being bullied. They can develop emotional health disorders, being dysregulated because of bullying. And that's a form of death that results from bullying. So therefore, I see bullying as a sin because of the fact that it leads to some type or some form of death, mainly specifically what I'm introducing right now, mental health and emotional health. Yeah. So obviously you can even make an argument for bullying being something that leads to social death because it can pretty much incapacitate someone's ability to interact and adapt with other people because they're being bullied. So that is what is the most difficult thing as far as middle ground, because it also segues into the fact that I don't support Christians who believe that atheists can have morality. I don't believe that because there's plenty of atheists who aren't bullies. I mean, it's just an example of something that atheists cannot do. So, and even the Bible doesn't support that atheists can't have morality. The Bible actually presents the case that atheists will have an incomplete morality without Christ. That's what it actually introduces. It never says that you can't have morality. It says that morality will be incomplete and insufficient before God. That's it.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you a question there, CJ, because I want to understand where you're coming from. I've been taking notes this whole time, and I've got a thing full of questions here. We don't have to go through all of them all at once. So just the first one that I would have is, you said that sin is anything that causes or leads to death, and I'd like to expand on that a little bit further because it sounded like you were saying towards the end there that it's like different types of death, and it doesn't necessarily literally mean physical ending of a life. Because I was getting like. So I'm going to dig into this, and forgive me if this sounds like a straw man. It's really not. I'm just trying to clarify. Like, is cancer a sin, or is it the result of sin because it leads to death?
Yeah, you got it. The result of sin. You got it.
So just understand then. Yeah. Is when you say sin in this way, then are you talking about the person themselves or society as a whole? If someone gets cancer, does that mean that they were sinful and the cancer is the punishment for that? Or does that mean they are in a sinful world and the cancer is the result of the sinful? What do you mean? Because we get that all the time. People are like,
So,
"Oh, it's a fallen world, so cancer happens
Right,
because
right.
everybody's in sin all the time." Or are you saying if you're a bad person, you'll get cancer?
Yeah, I would never say if you're a bad person you get cancer, because there's plenty of bad people who literally die of natural causes. So I would never
Right.
say bad people will get cancer. What I will say though is, as far as the whole introduction of where you're saying, is it that person's sin, or is it a result of someone else's sin, or is it a result of a fallen world? I can give two examples to basically support my response.
Okay.
So let's go. I've already mentioned about emotional health, mental health, social health. So let's go with biological health. Biological health, for example, we know that any smoke inhalation, regardless of what that smoke inhalation is, can lead to the death of your lung tissue. So obviously, if you're smoking tobacco, that can lead to cancer. So in that sense, sure, and only in that particular example can one claim that person's sin led to their death, because anything that leads to death is therefore sin. And of course, there's scripture that says your body's a temple, so to treat it like a temple because God created you special and everything else, which would be not treating your body like a temple because you're doing things that lead to the death of your quote unquote temple. So that could arguably be an example of a personal sin that leads to cancer.
Hey,
But
However,
what about alcohol?
a quote
What
unquote
about alcohol, man? Because alcohol causes cancer as well. It causes cirrhosis of the liver. It leads to death. It has all sorts of negative health. There is no safe dosage of alcohol whatsoever.
Yeah.
And yet, Jesus made wine and drank it and all these. So, like,
Yeah.
you know, are you talking about like just the ideas like temperance? Or are you saying there's a hard, fast limit that, you know, this is potentially carcinogenic, therefore it's sinful?
Yeah, sorry, let me cut in before you even answer that one.
Sure.
Alcohol is a great example, but what about campfires? We cook our food. In simplest version, we cook our food by burning wood over a wood stove or a bonfire or a campfire kind of a thing. There's all kinds of stuff inside the wood. Arguably, cooking food for yourself and loved ones, or travelers, is a good act. It's not a sinful act. It's not a harmful act. And yet, to do it, we must expose ourselves to the particulate matter contained within wood. And that can be carcinogenic, or at least can cause various lung maladies that can result in lung cell death. So, what about that? Is it a
yes,
sin
I
then?
can respond to it both.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
To it both.
Sure.
Go ahead.
To what both of you guys are saying.
Yeah.
So as far as the alcohol and the introduction of Jesus turning water to wine, I can't go too deep into that, so I'll try to make that simple, because Jesus turning water into wine was actually kind of similar to the whole Abraham Isaac thing, where that was supposed to be a symbolism for God sending his only son and for him to die on a wooden cross, which is why Abraham put Isaac on a pile of wood. So it's one of those things as far as Jesus turning water to wine. I've heard other Christians say that the wine at that time wasn't actually potent, and that you basically had to drink a ridiculously substantial amount to even be drunk with wine. That is the best response I have for that. As far as today, as far as liquor, which is very different from wine, that leads to liver damage, that could lead to cancer, some kind of kidney issue. That's the best response I have for that. But as far as the carcinogens that come from campfires, and how that can lead to lung cancer, that goes back to what Forrest introduced in his question of, was it somebody's personal sins, or was it the quote unquote fact that Christians believe we're in a fallen world? That would be, in my opinion, a fallen world example, because in Genesis, we were already given all of the food that we would need in the paradise of Eden. Therefore, we would have never had to do anything with campfires. So that, from where I sit in my theist position, would be cancer that comes from the result of a fallen world.
Okay. Next question, then, because I'm trying to put everything into your framework so I can understand it. So, like, normally I would sit here and I would try to tear into the morality of this proposition. If you watch me at all on the show, you would understand I'm very likely to try to say, okay, well, you know, why would God do these things? But I'm trying to like dig into like putting my thought process into yours a little bit so that I can try to find some cracks and like understand like where you're coming from. So forgive me if I'm asking a bunch of detailed questions and there's a reason. We talked about other carcinogens. What about pediatric diseases? What about children that, die from SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, days, weeks, maybe a month old and just drop dead? What about horrible birth defects? You're born with, a spina bifida or harlequin ichthyosis or some other thing where you're either not going to live very long, or if you do, you'll be permanently paralyzed, or like, hydrocephaly, all these different things that happen to innocent. What sin is the result of those? And I know you don't think, because you specified this, that sin doesn't really directly relate to these things. So I'm not saying like, what sins did the babies do? I understand what you just said a second ago was because of the condition of the world after, the exile from the garden, the conditions of the world are such that these things still happen. How does that translate? When you talk about pediatric disease, what are the conditions of the world that are different from what it was in the Garden of Eden that allows for that and justifies that kind of thing?
So that particular portion, I'm going to unfortunately ruffle some feathers here, because this really goes into the whole term again that I hate to run by you, but that goes into a deeper study of Genesis 3. I'm sure you guys have already heard about the whole we're born with 3. A second nature, a whole second nature to sin, or which causes the inclination or the proclivity to choose sin. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard that whole thing.
Yep.
That is the best response I have to that. And I'll just keep it as simple as that, simply because I'm sure you guys have heard it before. I hope you guys haven't heard it in a crazy, weird way, because I've heard it presented in very strange ways, ways that I would never present it. So I'm honestly hoping that doesn't completely misconstrue where I'm coming from and set you off, because trust me, I get it. I've heard some things that set me off that I couldn't believe people were saying. That's nowhere in the Bible, but
CJ,
that's the best response I have, man.
CJ, we have a proclivity towards sin in your worldview, right? You're citing to the Bible, and we are as God made us in your worldview, right?
No. So the way that God originally made us changed in Genesis 3, which is why I introduced that.
Okay. But he made us with the possibility of, through our own action, transforming us into something that has the proclivity towards sin, right? There was an open door that he built into our construction that allowed us to change into a sin-laden being, right?
So let me understand what you mean by built into construction, because I've had this question posed before, and I'm not sure which way you're introducing it. Are you asking, did he build it into us as far as like innately, or are you asking, did he build it into us as far as the fall?
Well, CJ, I don't believe in any of this stuff, just for the record.
I know you don't.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to understand what you believe, because it seems to me that if God created intelligent beings, us, in a way where it was possible for us to choose, to make decisions that would allow us to have sin enter into our mind, our spirit, and our physical bodies, therefore God, knowing all things and knowing past, present, and future and existing outside of time, God created us knowing that this would happen, right? No surprises. You ain't going to pull a fast one on God. So if God is all-powerful, right, why didn't God create, because I can conceive in my mind, a creation that doesn't have these kind of, I'll say weaknesses if you want. Why didn't God create an intelligent being with free will that couldn't be transformed into a sin-laden being?
Yeah. So this kind of goes into the full understanding of God's omni-being or his omni-nature. That's a better way of saying, because God actually is a spirit being, but his omni-nature is what encapsulates that. So I know you've introduced that God is omnipotent, which is all powerful. Of course, I know you guys heard that he's omnipresent. Omnipresent. That he's also omniscient, which you did mention, and omnibenevolent. So, with your introduction, that why didn't God make us in a way where we couldn't choose this choice that he omnisciently knew wouldn't be necessarily good or very bad, that would take away his omnibenevolence, because what that would mean is that he would have to create us 100% defaulted, and that we basically wouldn't have any autonomy at all if he created us in a manner by which we couldn't make any choices and as if we had no options at all. So that would take away one of the aspects of his omni nature.
I disagree with that because of the premise of what Johnny brought up. This is something that we've talked about a few times on the show. The last time that I sinned, so to speak, the last time I did something wrong, if we believe I have free will, then I freely could have chosen to do the right thing. I had the ability to do the right thing, and I chose not to. I had the free choice. I could have chosen either one. So it is logically possible and reasonable that I freely made the right choice. And the last time before that I did something wrong, it was logically possible that I made the right choice. And the time before that I was wrong, it was logically possible I made the right choice. And so it's kind of like one of those, you drop a thing down a Plinko board. Every time the peg, or every time the puck hits one of the pegs, it could go left or right. There's a chance either way. And there is a chance, it's logically possible that it goes right every single time and ends up in the very right corner of the board. It's very statistically unlikely, but it is actually logically possible. This is the whole point of, interlevel statistics. When you talk about the Gaussian distribution, you can actually buy online these Gaussian boards where you pour a bunch of little balls down a bunch of little pegs, and it makes this perfect normal curve, this normal distribution, this perfect bell curve. So that's the thing. Every time I have ever sinned, it was logically possible for me to choose the right choice. And therefore, it stands to reason, it logically makes sense, that there is a theoretical potential universe where we all have free will. There is no, God doesn't control anything. We all have the freedom to choose, and we all just so happen to make the right choice every single time. That is a universe that could logically exist. Very unlikely, but logically possible. And if God didn't make that universe, then he did so on purpose. He made a universe where people would fail and sin. And because he's omniscient, he knew what sins that they were going to commit and when they were going to commit them and why they were going to commit them. And then he chooses to judge them for those sins afterwards, after the fact that he knew exactly what was going to happen and why, and he made it that way on purpose. So at the end of the day, I don't agree with what you're saying. It wouldn't take away anyone's free will to make a universe where they freely make the right choice. That is a logical universe that God could have made, and the fact that he didn't is his problem, not ours. Does that make sense?
Well, I never said that God took away the free will. I didn't introduce that. I introduced that if he took away their free will, it would also take away his omnibenevolence. I never introduced that.
Right. But you use that as an argument against what Johnny said, and what Johnny said didn't necessarily take away their free will. In fact, I believe he specifically said that everybody could freely make the right choice.
Right. What I'm saying is, maybe I misheard him or misunderstood what he was saying, but I thought what he was presenting was, why didn't God just make everyone defaulted into the right choice?
No, I think that's not what I was going for. I think.
Okay. I misheard you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And I know you're going to rewatch the video and listen to the conversation again because you're a fantastic caller, CJ. But to go along that lines, knowing that humans will choose whatever they're going to choose in your theology, right? I don't understand why an omnibenevolent God, knowing that humans have the potential to commit so-called sin, why would God create a universe where the consequences of sin are so dire when God knows that what humans know is limited? that we are immersed in a physical body that has hormones and or subject to abuse, subject to desperation, depravity, and
Trickery. You could be lied to and be told that something was good when it wasn't.
Yeah. Bad education, all these things. God knows that human beings are finite beings, right? Creates a universe where all these things are possible. There's a great episode of Star Trek where there's a guy who has like a tumor in his brain. I think it was Voyager. Yeah, Voyager. And the guy had a tumor in his brain. He had no compassion, no problem with harming people and doing terrible things to people. They find him, they perform a surgery, and now he has this terrible remorse for what he's done because now he's physically repaired, right? And of course, the victims of him demand death. And spoiler alert, it's 90s. But, how is that justice when God knows that there are essentially epistemological tumors in all of us, and yet has us make either the right Plinko board choices, every time. And if we don't make the right Plinko choices enough, or whatever, if the Plinko board sends you along, one part, on this half you're good, on this half you're not, and if you're on this half, well, you're doomed into oblivion or eternal punishment or something else. That doesn't seem benevolent to me. Because that doesn't make sense.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Instead, it seems, please respond.
Yeah, so originally about 10 years ago when I first considered becoming a Christian, I had these questions too, and it stemmed from having been taught the Bible from everyone else. When I studied the Bible, I realized two fundamental things that led to me having the same conclusions that you have now, which was a misunderstanding of the biblical definition of God being omnipotent and a misunderstanding of how exactly God is the creator. So two things then. When the Bible says God is omnipotent, that's usually interpreted by us, just like it was interpreted by me, as meaning pretty much all craftful, rather than all powerful, meaning doing things contrary to nature, which is such as like, since God can do all things, I know you didn't introduce this, but I'm just bringing this up for an example. Mm-hmm. Since God can do all things, then why didn't he create humans defaulted? That goes against the nature of omnibenevolence, which is love, because love is a choice. So if God were to do that, that would be contrary to the nature of love, and love is a choice. Therefore, that would make him all craftful rather than all powerful. So that fundamental misunderstanding of how God's omnipotence is defined is why people usually come up with, well, why didn't God do 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, 6, 7, 8? And that's because all those numbers from 1 to 8 would be contrary to his omni nature. And as far as the next example, as far as the next rebuttal, as far as misunderstanding how God is the creator, when you go to Genesis 1, what you see two things. You see that God spoke creation into existence, because nothing happened until you get the whole repetitive phrase, and God said, then God said, and God said, then God said. So God spoke creation into existence, even though the usual conclusion is that we think God's hands, and we see pictures like this where it has these huge, just ginormous hands around the globe, as if God formed the earth. And that's not how it came into existence. He spoke it into existence, and the word that he repeated was let. And obviously, we all know that the word let carries an extremely heavy connotation of permission or allowance. So from the very beginning, when God said let over and over again, God let things happen as they were. So already the concept of free choice, or the concept of free will, which can be argued against when contrasted. The argument of freedom, the the presentation of freedom is already there. And the fact that God simply let creation come into existence. And this segues into what I'm saying when I say that letting things simply come into existence is the way that God created the world. And he let it come into existence by speaking the word let. So the belief that God created this with the intricacy or the, I guess you could say, dexterity of his fingers or his hands isn't actually what the Bible ever presents when you read it.
No, I don't think we're really worried about, like, Manos hands of fate kind of making it happen with hands.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not.
Yeah. But Forrest, and please, Forrest.
Yeah, well, my biggest disconnect here is it seems to be that you're talking past yourself in the way you're using the terms like defaulting and things like that. You keep saying that, like, God can't default people and have them set to do a certain thing. And I get your distinction that you're making there. I don't understand how that comports with omniscience, because, like, example that I've a couple of examples I'll give you that I've given on the show before is one of them. If I get in my car and my fuel gauge says it's got 10 miles left in it, and I try to drive 100 miles, I can't be upset with a car for failing to drive 100 miles if I knew what it was going to do before. Maybe a more apt example in this case would be if I were to record a TV show, a sports game or whatever, and I see the football teams play, and I have it on recording. I know every part of the game. I know where the players are going to go, who's going to throw the ball to who's going to win the game. I can't then watch the thing again and say, okay, well, but this time, if they don't do these things, I'm going to be mad at the players if they do these things, because I already know the whole outcome. I know everything about the game. I can't then decide to be upset by certain parts of the game that I don't like if the players have no control to do anything different. I already know the whole thing. So, like, I get what you're saying, that God doesn't force us to do anything. God lets things happen. God allows things. God doesn't default people. I can appreciate your distinction there, but it doesn't comport with his omniscience. If he already knows the outcome anyway, then it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, he is making people, knowing the bad things that they're going to do, knowing when they're going to do them, why they're going to do them, how they're going to feel when they're doing them, understanding all the conditions surrounding them doing the bad things that they're doing. He understands all of it. He knows all of it, and he's still upset that it happens and decides to punish them or judge them for it. And that is as bad to me as taking away free will. It's a silly thing for him to do. It's a ridiculous standard to say, I already know what you're going to do, but if you do it, I'm going to be mad. That's a dumb behavior. Do you understand what I'm getting at there?
So I understand where you're getting at, but the reason why I understand where you're getting at is because of the same thing I've introduced with the other components of his omni-nature. Like I introduced how it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how God is omnipotent and how he is omnibenevolent. There's also a fundamental misunderstanding of how his omniscience works.
Let me ask you one more question, CJ. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there was one other thing that I want to drive at. I just want to understand, because it's going to help me interpret what you're saying next. Do you believe in a literal hell?
By literal, are you referring to like a place that I could see now?
No, I mean after we die. Yeah, after we die, are our souls, if we live in sin, we die as atheists, whatever the thing is, is there a actual place, whether or not it be physical or spiritual, or this is all semantic, where my soul, my consciousness somehow will experience eternal torture in fire? Is that a thing that you believe is real? And feel free to stretch however it needs, because I'm just trying to drive at the point of it. It doesn't have to be like the specific, like, well, technically it's this. I mean to just say, is there such thing as eternal torture of any kind, eternal punishment of any kind, in any way for sin?
Not eternal, no. That's the reason why I'm saying that these things. I had the same misunderstanding that you guys have now about what the Bible.
So you go to hell for a little while.
It's like purgatory.
1,000? No, it's 1,000 years.
Where do you get that from?
The quote on the Bible.
Where?
When God restores Eden, when God restores Eden, which is also called the New Jerusalem in the Bible, it's going to be the 1,000-year reign of quote unquote heaven on earth. It's basically the Garden of Eden restored for 1,000 years. This is after the end of the world. But there's going to be a 1,000-year reign of quote unquote. I'm going to bring it together. I'm going to bring it together.
Well, I'm saying there's people who have been dead for more than 1,000 years that you would probably say were sinful people. So somebody who died 1,000 years ago, are they still currently in hell? Were they ever in hell? Are they waiting to go to hell for the right time? Like what's going on?
Yeah, that's what I was about to explain.
Okay.
So when the Bible mentions hell, there's actually three different quote unquote types of hell, and that's not even the correct way to say it, but I'm going to say it like that so you guys can follow where I'm leading you to.
Simplicity is fine.
Okay, cool. So, like the quote unquote first death, that would be the grave. So, if you were to take it all the way down to Hebrew and Greek, like people love to do, technically all of us die and go to quote unquote hell, because the first type of hell is just the grave. But what I was introducing about the 1,000-year reign of heaven on earth, that's the time of the second type of hell, which would be the 1,000 years of your question, Forrest, which is, when do people actually go? So yes, you do not go to hell, the hell that's commonly understood. You do not go to that place immediately. So to answer your question, no, there's no one in quote unquote literal or supernatural hell right now. That doesn't happen until the 1,000-year reign.
When they get there, is that then a place of actual, like, I'm going to use the word physical. I don't necessarily literally mean like tangible. I mean like of perceivable pain. Is it something which could be described as torture?
So it is something that could be described as torture.
Okay.
However, I understand that the reason you're introducing that is because more than likely you believe that God created hell, since that's what people say. It's absolutely false. God did not create hell. You cannot find one scripture, one concept.
I don't actually have to go down that way. That's not actually what I was driving at all. I'm saying that God even if God didn't create hell, that's still a thing that exists in his universe.
He could break it up.
That's still something that he should then have control over if he is omnipotent. And what my question is what exact circumstances, in any other way ever, could you ever describe anything that could even be described as torture as a part of benevolence, especially omnibenevolence?
Yeah, so I can explain that too. So this goes back again to this, which is why I was introducing it. This goes back again to the fact that God did not create hell. He didn't create it. So from the beginning, he was not thinking about torturing even the fallen angels, because hell was not created. Does he have control over hell now? Control in what sense? Control as in who goes and who doesn't?
CJ, yes. Describe what hell is like. The final hell, the worst hell. What's it like?
There's only one description in the Bible. Are you referring to
I don't know.
Fire?
The worst hell that you believe in.
Oh, well, I only believe in one hell, and that's what the Bible presents.
And what does it present? Just tell me that. Just tell me the qualities of that hell.
It says weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Okay, cool. Weeping and gnashing of teeth. So you believe that God doesn't have the ability to eliminate the place where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth from existence? You believe that God...
No, I don't believe that. That's actually a false presentation of me.
No, I'm asking.
And the Bible.
That's a question.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I thought you were leading into a question.
Just get to it. I'm liking the call, CJ, but we've gone quite a bit over. Just trying to get it again. Forrest and I think all of this is a made up story by a bunch of, Bronze Age iron people. But much love for them. Thank you for many things. But so
God does destroy hell.
Why not destroy it now? Why not destroy it at the beginning of time? Why not make the worst thing something that's like not wailing and gnashing of teeth? Mm-hmm. If God has the ability to destroy hell, why let it sit around? It's like Guantanamo Bay, why even have it be there? It's the ultimate Guantanamo Bay. So he can't be omnibenevolent. I don't think, you know what? I'll tell you what. That's going to be a rhetorical question, CJ, because we have gone quite a bit over time, and I really like this call. And folks at home, I think that CJ has great potential to be a very interesting caller to our show. I wish he would call earlier. Next week. I haven't given my January dates yet. I kind of wish I had, because I don't know if it's going to happen. I want to continue this conversation with Forrest, with J. Mike, with any of the other hosts. But we're going to let you go. Thank you for your call. Giving us some thoughts. Forrest, last thought if you need it.
Yeah. I actually have one, and please be very brief if you can. Yeah, and if you can't be very brief with your answer, just let us know and we'll move on and we'll get back to it. Like my last question that I was going to drive to was, scientific data requires interpretation. Raw data is meaningless as it is. You have to understand a bunch of context of what you're looking at, and that's because of the nature of science. We are developing tools in order to see and understand things that our eyes and ears and normal senses can't pick up on their own, right? That's the point. But the Word of God is supposed to be the Word of God. He's passing down exactly what he wants you to know, exactly how he wants you to know it. So my last question, if there can be a brief answer to it, is why should the Word of God need all of these deep studies and deep interpretation that you've been going through for the past two calls now of like, I can't just give you a straight answer on this. I have to give all these details of like what this actually means here and here and here. If this is the most important thing in the universe to us, this is the creator of the universe telling us exactly what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it and how we're supposed to live, the most important instructions ever possible. Why would it require all this deep interpretation? Why wouldn't it just be a one-page document saying, hey, I'm God, here's some proof, here's everything you need to know?
Yeah, so I can give you two answers. I'll save the long answer for another time that I call.
Awesome.
But short answer, like you were asking for. I believe the only reason we have to do these deep studies is because of what I mentioned when I first got on the call. There are so many cults and so much church culture that have already spread so much lies that we have no choice but to delve deep in it anyway.
Okay.
Right, but that could have been avoided from the very beginning.
Yeah.
If it had just been a simple document to begin with, right?
Exactly. The reason why we have
so
it is
Yeah,
go ahead.
Are you asking more so why didn't God literally write the sentence, I didn't create hell?
No, I'm saying if why do we have this thick tome full of allegories and stories and things that have to be interpreted this way and that. And when it says this thing, it doesn't actually mean that thing, because on the other half of the book, it uses this term late. Like when at the very beginning of this call, you said, in the very beginning of the book, the second line in the book, Genesis 1:2, says water. But it doesn't mean water, because in literally the last part of the book, in John explains it this other way. And that tells you about what it means in the beginning of the book. And like, why do that if this is the most important document in the history of the universe? This is the thing that tells us what God wants us to do. What couldn't he figure out a way to write it down in such a simplistic way that anybody could understand it and nobody could misinterpret it, and none of these lies and misinterpretations of different religions and all the stuff you're talking about were necessary? It just says this is what you have to do, and it's like one page, maybe 2 pages of just very succinct, to the point, unalterable, easy thing to understand. Why is that not possible for God? Why do we need all this about talking donkeys and talking snakes and about global floods and all these other things? Why is all that in there when it could just be simple?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding what you're asking correctly, the best response I have for that is two reasons. Number one, languages changed, and that is accounted for in the Bible. I forget what chapter exactly, but it is in Genesis where the changing of languages is a, yeah, you got it. Yeah. So that's one reason why translations are needed. And the second reason is the Bible says that the whole point of Christ was to reconcile us back into a relationship or a fellowship with God, which we already had originally. And there's a scripture that says that if you ask, seek, knock, pretty sure you heard this before. If you humbly ask, seek, and knock, then God will be found. Those two combinations are the best that I can present to you for why I believe the Bible was written the way it's written.
CJ, I don't think I can disagree with you more. I think that I have to let you go, and I really don't want to. I would like to continue this conversation. I'm sure that the crew will murder me because I'm actually in studio right now. But I'm just a simple country lawyer here, and I'm telling you, if God really wanted us to know, allegedly, really wanted us to know an eternal truth, and translation were the issue, God could have created a giant tower that's available in the distance at all times that has writing written not only in the writing of the contemporary times of the person looking at it, but also written on their heart, on the inside of their eyelids, so that it cannot be confused. It has one single, almost like analytical philosophy kind of simplistic language that there is no uncertainty. God could do it. God has that power if God exists. So the fact that God chose to write in like human language and not constantly refresh his browser when it comes to that shows to me that it's not a very good argument. But the other one, I just kept thinking about that. You could write it in the sky every day. There would still be free will. Could appear to us every year and say, Johnny P. Angel, just a reminder, do not taketh upon yourselves the possessions of other human beings. Do not murdereth thy neighbors. Doesn't do that. Instead, does what looks like to be the folk tales of pre-scientific goat herders.
Of everything is in the Old Testament. The pillar of smoke to lead them through the desert and a pillar of fire by night.
CJ, CJ, it
very easily could have hired a skywriter to just write, quit eating fucking shrimp up in the sky.
CJ, my friend, it could be all these amazing labyrinthian, that's some Skyrim. It could be like this complex menagerie, this labyrinth of thought and investigation and translation and interpretation and, psychedelic stuff, or it could just be the pre-scientific writings of a bunch of Iron Age goat herders who were trying to figure out what happens to grandma when the saber-toothed tigers take her, or the wars come and take away your children, or whatever else. It could be that. And it could also, that second explanation explains why, despite the fact that it's written on our heart and all that stuff, everyone seems to have generally a different take on basic biological constants and what constitutes right or wrong, right? And while I really do, and I want you to call back, and I'm actually going to let you answer to this one. No disrespect meant, but I'll let you go. While you're spending what appears to be, and I hope you tune back in because I just hung up on you. I'm sorry, but just because we have to go. While I appreciate your investigation into this, it reminds me of when I'm traveling in the airport or wherever, and I see a person studying hard a Bible, and I just can't help but think, what a waste of freaking time. They're reading this stuff. They're using this powerful computer inside their noggin to better understand this writing. I'm like, do something else, Like,
what if they're a theologian? What if they're a Bible scholar?
All right, do that. But
assume the best of people.
I know, but that's what I'm telling you. It's my thought. I know that there's other stuff, but yeah. With that said, my gosh, CJ, thank you so much for calling. Forrest.
CJ was awesome.
Yeah. This is the caller we want. We don't want I'm not even going to say his name. We didn't take his call today.
I saw what he was calling about, and I'm so glad you just dropped him without even addressing it, because Jesus of Christ land, dude.
Jesus,
we can't tell the audience what it was, but
yeah.
Woof.
Hey, I ain't taking your calls no more. You know who you are, bro. All right. So you know what? You're not blocked from the show. You can talk to other people who God hasn't hardened his heart, but you're not going to get a call from me. Look, we got super chats for us. Please
taking that call either.
Please do the super chats for us.
Loudy, we got so many. We've got Kira sent $1.99 of her cents to say, quick examples of biological evidence against God. I mean, I can give you biological evidence of shitty design. The most common that everyone likes to talk about is the recurrent laryngeal branch of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is cranial nerve number 8. 7 or 8. I don't remember. But it's one of them. That's so stupid for me to take that much time to think about it. It innervates your larynx right in here.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get there, it runs all the way down your neck, wraps around your aorta, and comes all the way back up. Except for on the right side, it goes around, I think, subclavian artery. And that's because it also innervates all your other internal organs. It provides somatic and motor, sensory and motor information, innervation to those things. So that's a dumb path. It makes perfect sense in evolutionary context, but in terms of a god, absolutely not. And I can give you a million more of those. Check out my video on my YouTube channel called Biologist versus Bigot, where I make a video about Matt Powell's ridiculous, insane arguments. And I did a whole segment in there called Humans Are Terrible with Forrest Valkai, and it explains so many things you can watch.
Some of my favorite people are humans, though.
Right? We got Inglaba sent 2 whatever those are, some sort of British pound dollars, to say, Forrest, you don't believe in England? Okay, Scotland here. You're on thin ice, Scotland! And then we've got next is Fern Lovebun sent $2. Props to CJ for a sincere and honest dialogue. You know what was crazy when that call was going on? Is that we have in the chat, if you're watching this and you don't look at the chat, still don't. But in the chat sometimes we get we get a little heart that pops up and it says X amount of people heart this host. And it'll be like, 100 people love Johnny, and everyone gets to type in and tag in that they're a part of that group, and the number grows and grows and everything. Mm-hmm. The first time I've ever seen it in my whole history of this show, it said 200 whatever people heart this caller because he was doing a great job. So really, really, really good props to you. And then we got one more. Ryan DeLongchamp sent $5. We all know that the universe was sneezed into existence by the great green Arkle seizure. Yes, I read it once in a book. Yep. We have all read the book. It's a better one than the Bible. And I think those are all of the ones from this. Yeah, I think that's it.
Are we gonna do the voicemail? Forrest, do you want to do the voicemail?
The crew was asking me if I was down with it. I told them you're the host. You do whatever you want to do, man. I'm good to go for that. Yeah, let's make it happen. Let's do a voicemail. Let's take a voice call for the first time ever, except for the other times that we might have done this.
It's too good. Yeah.
This is a real voicemail we got.
From Ohio. I called in probably months ago. Had a discussion, talking to a younger guy. Yeah, I just want you to know, man, I wonder if you realize how stupid it sounds that you think that a raindrop that came from the sky and then came from a little tiny microorganism you can't even see turned into a human, because you do realize that that's kind of like where this stems from, your whole evolution theory.
Yep.
Hope you know that things are winding down in the end times here. Things will be revealed.
Things.
And the only way is the Lord Jesus Christ.
Totally.
You think you got everything figured out because you listened to people in a college or read a book that other men made, but I'm going to break it to you. You're being deceived.
Stings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, anyway, take care.
Yeah.
Much love.
So, just in case you're curious, I'm the younger guy. You hit the nail on the head, caller. A raindrop came down, turned into a microorganism that turned into a human, and I read that in a book, and that's how I know it's true. And that's literally the whole religion of science. And watch somebody clip that and actually freaking believe that that's sincere. Just for people who are curious, we listen to your voicemails, and they're hilarious.
We have a good time.
They make us smile.
Yeah.
Talk about fruit juice. There's a lot there.
Got the fruit juice right here. Got the fruit juice thinking of dudes as we speak. Thank you so much for that voicemail. Sincere voicemails, don't call to prank us, although we'll listen to those too, but we won't put them on the air. I was that a sincere voicemail? People say like, oh, that wasn't real. That was a prankster. You know what? For every, it's Poe's law, right? There are people out there that actually think that raindrops turned into microorganisms, turned into human beings, and it happened within what actually is the timeline of Homo sapiens, history. And we don't think that, but I love that stuff. I had a guy calling about sovereign citizen stuff. That one's over on Truth Wanted. Oh, I love the calls. And we get so many more that we don't air, but we aired this one. But you know what? I got to say, have you said to yourself, I love the content the ACA creates, but I wish there was a way I could get it all the time. I wish I could get it all the time. Well, then we've got you covered. We have two 24/7 live streams. I forgot the 7. AXP TV delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials over 26 seasons of AXP, and now Heathen TV provides you with clips from Talk Heathen. Watch or listen, favorite hosts, discover some hosts you've never heard of. You can go ahead and visit tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/HeathenTV to join in the fun. Question of the week, share your experience. What's an inappropriate thing to do or say at a holiday party? Enter in the comments below. I already see him in the live chat. Don't you dare not leave a comment and leave that there. You're making me quite cross if you do that. Tune in at the beginning of next week's episode to hear the top 3 answers. It's always fun to do a show with you, Forrest. I feel that you're here next to me. Oh, we got to do another show together in the same place.
I want to be there next year. I wish I was there.
We did karaoke after the last show we did together.
It was embarrassing, but fun.
Yeah. Oh, we tore it up, and so did the people that came for the Bat Cruise. But you know what?
What I did.
Yeah, I was raspy, but
sang everything an octave too low. It was great.
Yeah. Last thoughts. I'll give it to you, and then we'll say goodbye.
I would just say I'm bitterly disappointed. Over 75 people voted in the chat that they would call in to defend that life can't come from non-life, and we didn't get any of those calls at all. And there was, as always, as usually is the case, at least one dude in the chat who was arguing with people the whole time, and no matter how many people told him to call in, he just didn't want to. I guess he lost his cell phone. But hey, if you're out there in the world and you think that creationism makes more sense than evolution, or that sex and gender are the same thing, or that a literal man in the sky made the stuff that is all around us right now, or that eating pork or shellfish is the reason for our sin, or whatever other thing it is, this is your chance to talk to people who actually disagree with you and have a serious, honest conversation about it. And I wish more people would take that opportunity seriously, because we could help a lot of people if only you'd have the courage to call in.
Yeah, and for the record, we don't hate God. We're just not convinced that he exists. See you next
Praise
time.
the raindrop, y'all.
Bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.